Hey guys and welcome back to my channel. This is part 1 of What If Naruto Was in Game of Thrones. Before we begin, don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and also go and support the author, link in description. Some say Tywin Lannister does not felt fear. Perhaps that was true. Perhaps not. Who can say? As Lord Paramount of the Westerlands, head of House Lannister, Lord of Castle Rock and Warden of the West, Lord Tywin was certainly made of sterner stuff than the average Westerosi noble. He had taken a house once known for its weakness and made it strong once again. Not through generosity, or honor, or foolish kindness, but through ruthless pragmatism. He was, after all, the head of his house. Naturally, the head of the house must stand strong, lest they appear weak. It's the family name that lives on. It's all that lives on. Not personal glory or honor, but family. His father had been weak in matters of the realm, he would not be. Those who had come to think of the Lannisters as weak were swiftly disproved of such notions. If a debt were owed to him, one must repay it. If one did not, well, just ask the Rhynes and Tarbecks. If any were yet living, they would loudly attest to his intensity. The bards had even composed a quaint song of the massacre, a tragic but necessary step in furthering the foundation of their house while eradicating those who would oppose them. The Lannister name would remain long after he returned to the dirt, the legacy left behind by him, his children, and his children's children. At present he had little hope for Jaime or Cersei, far too interested in preening than statecraft or the business of Castle Rock. Perhaps that wasn't fair him, they were only children after all. But neither had proven themselves overmuch in the last 9 months. Thus, it was here with his third child that his hopes lay. Hope and all the soul-crushing fear that came with it. Yes, Tywin Lannister knew what fear was. He understood it. Respected it. Push. He knew that fear now, felt it coil in his gut like a hideous serpent threatening to strangle him as he watched his lady wife writhe on her birthing bed. Each cry ripped through Castle Rock, a knife through his heart, every gasp a painful blow to his soul. And there was nothing he could do for her. For all his might and wealth, Tywin was as powerless as any other man in this, weak as any other. He could only stand by and hold her hand while she swore and spit and snarled. Joanna, the light of his life, the one woman in this world that he would yield to, his everything. Without her his life would be rudderless, his heart hardened. She was every bit a lioness of the Lannisters. It was not pain that made her weep but concern for the babe in her belly. "He's coming, beloved." The frantic desperation in her voice unmanned him. "I can feel him." For all his wit, Tywin found himself struck speechless by her ferocity. He saw the strain etched into her face, the pain as that old doddering fool of a maester coaxed her through her contractions. Yet for all her suffering Joanna had adamantly refused milk of the poppy or any such medicine, though she bled and bore her suffering with a tenacity few possessed, though she gritting her teeth as her body worked tirelessly to usher this tiny new soul into the world, he couldn't help but fear for her. Golden hair hanging like a wreath about her pale, sweaty face, her crimson dress hiked up to the knees. The child was nearly here, or so she claimed. He was inclined to believe her. Gods. So much blood. A man's past can haunt him. The smallest of actions often have the most lasting of consequences. Cersei and Jaime had been a hard birth for her. This was harder still. For all the blood and battle he'd seen, the sight of a child being born his child, still unnerved him. Yet he couldn't bear to tear himself from his wife's side, even as her grip promised to crush every bone in his right hand. He grimaced against it and willed himself not to dwell on dark thoughts, but pleasant ones. At least Aerys in a rare moment of sanity hadn't objected to Pycelle's presence for Joanna's labor. With him here at Castle Rock, she might yet survive. Or she might die. A sharp and sudden squall arose all at once, startling husband and wife alike. "It's a boy, my lord." For all his age, Pycelle proved his worth and loyalty 10 times over. In less than a minute he'd severed the umbilical cord and wrapped the wailing babe in clean linen. Then his bearded face turned down and pensive for some reason as he gazed at the child's face, for reasons Tywin didn't understand. The boy looked healthy. He certainly sounded healthy enough by his cries. No, he decided, he didn't like the look the Grand Maester was giving him. As if he were a freak of some sort. An abomination. Nothing could be further from the truth. He was not a dwarf, and Tywin saw no extra fingers or toes. He was, for all intensive purposes, just a boy. Red orbs. No doubt the Maester meant the words for himself, but Tywin's keen hearing caught it immediately. An ill omen. What are you on about? But Joanna was already rising, reaching for the newborn with the single-minded intensity that so defined her as a mother, and he never had his answer. Concern for his wife won out over suspicion, and he released her hand to place a steadying hand against her back. She swatted it aside and propped herself up on her elbows of her own accord, drawing a chagrined smile from the lion. "Let me see him, Pycelle." It began as a groan, but with every syllable she grew stronger. "Let me see my son. If it would please my lady," the Grand Maester doddered, "perhaps a wet nurse would be. His wife would have naught of it. Give him to me." Before such devotion even the Maester faltered, and the boy was soon within her arms, mewling softly. "Look at him, Tywin," she crooned, beckoned. "Look at your son." The Lord of Castle Rock did just that. Bright blue eyes squinted up at him. None of this red orbs nonsense Pycelle had been on about. Perhaps old age was catching up to the Grand Maester. Regardless, he had served his purpose and helped to bring him into the world unharmed. So it was, then. A night of passion so many moons ago had given birth to a son. The birthing had been rough, but Joanna had survived, somehow. Even now he watched her clutch the child close, cooing softly at him as only a mother could. In moments the boy was nursing, sucking lustily against her breast. She would live, Pycelle assured him. If she hadn't, he shuddered at the thought. Without his wife, no. Tywin's mind rebelled with a violent shudder and refused to even consider it. He was fond of his children, inasmuch as man like him could be fond of them, but his cold heart had only ever truly warmed for Joanna. Seeking to distract himself, the lion dismissed Pycelle with an errant wave. "Thank you for your service. Leave us." The Maester glanced at him. "Be but my lord, this is an ill omen." "Did I stutter?" A growl etched itself into his voice. "Out." With a sputter that wasn't entirely feigned this time, the Grand Maester tottered toward the door. But his gaze lingered, drawn once more to the boy's face. Why, what was it about his son that perturbed him so? Tywin resolved to ask him at a later date, but now was not the time for such thoughts. No sooner had the door shut than he turned his attention back to the boy. "I suppose we need to think of a name," he murmured. "I've already thought of one," Joanna hummed, rocking the babe softly. A golden brow rose in mild consternation and surprise both. "Have you now, without telling me?" So she told him her choice gladly, and he knew at once that there would be no swaying her. Of course, he still tried anyway. "You can't be serious." He nearly guffawed outright at the news. "With a name like that, he'll be a laughingstock. Tell me you're joking." "I've never been more serious about anything in my life, my beloved." Joanna's cheek nuzzled against that of their son's with tender care, cradling him as though he might shatter into glass at any moment. "I saw him in a dream, Tywin. He spoke to me, told me his name. He'll do great things someday." The conviction in her voice unnerved the lion, shook his resolve. A dream, nonsense. Perhaps she was still out of sorts from the birthing. How could a boy who'd only just been born tell his mother what he wanted to be named? It was the stuff of snarks and grumpkins, and he believed none of it. What manner of magic was that? Nonsense, utter nonsense. But for the sake of her pride, he leashed his retort, if only just. "Did he now?" Tywin rolled his eyes. "I suppose he read your palm as well." "Careful, dear." His wife clicked her tongue at him playfully, her free spirit already beginning to recover in the absence of Pycelle. "I may be weak at the moment, but I'll repay every bit of your snark." In the end the choice was taken from Tywin, and Joanna, as was often her wont, named their son after the dream she'd had. In his darker moments he would look back at this moment this day and dwell at it, somewhat ruefully in the days to come. An unorthodox name perhaps, and not necessarily the one he'd intended to give the boy at first, but it would do. He sounded it out now, testing the newfound name on his lips as he gazed down at the infant swaddled in cloth, considering him, his odd blue eyes, that faint golden wisp of hair, those peculiar cheeks. "Naruto, is it?" And the boy smiled. He would change the world. Joanna Lannister loved her children. Every true mother treasured their children. More than life itself. Any woman who cared not a whit for their offspring was no matriarch in her eyes, but a wench and a craven, something to be reviled and spit upon. A parent had a duty to those that came after them, and a mother's duty was to her children. Always her children. They were Joanna's light, her life, her everything. Second only to her husband himself, and only then because she'd grown up with Tywin as a little girl. She would live for them, fight for them, die for them if she must. Never before had. But her children. As such, she adored the twins just as much as she did the babe in her arms. Stubborn Jaime, still struggling with his letters and only just now learning to hold a sword, yet wide-eyed with wonder when he saw the bundle in her eyes. Sullen Cersei, petulant at no longer being the center of her mother's world, yet curious about her new brother all the same. Blue eyes, he murmured, that's new. What of it? Cersei gave a sulk, heedless of the look it garnered her. They might yet change. Joanna offered Jaime an indulgent smile. Would you like to hold him, then? Jaime jolted, but shook his head fiercely. But, I might drop him. Don't be such a coward. Of course, Cersei wasn't going to take that lying down. Anything Jaime couldn't or wouldn't do was something she absolutely had to. She wanted to be the center of attention, and if that meant holding this burbling infant then so be it. Naturally, Joanna had anticipated this, and as such when Cersei pushed her brother out of the way, she offered little Naruto to her gladly. It was a good thing for her to take an interest in her brother after all, and she would gladly give the twins the nudge they needed to accept their sibling. They were family. Family looked after one another. Careful, now, she instructed as young Cersei cradled the infant in her arms, watch his head. I have him, mother. Cersei tossed her head, I don't see what all the fuss is about. Then the babe reached up and did the unthinkable. Her daughter blinked. Once. Twice. Finally, she dared a small smile. He is rather cute, I suppose, she mumbled weakly, for a babe. Jaime crowded in at her elbow. Quite the grip he's got. Joanna would forever vividly recall her first memory of them interacting with one another, of watching, spellbound as the babe clutched at Cersei's outstretched finger and cooed softly. That drew a rare smile from her daughter and she even unbent enough to deign a giggle. In that moment their eyes there was no distinction to be made between the three of them. They were her children, she would love them until the end of her days and beyond. Any child that came after this one would be just as loved. So she swore, by the old gods and the new. Tywin kept insisting they name him Nathaniel at least. Naruto was too foreign a name for a Lannister, he said. It won't command respect, he said. Eventually she yielded, if only in part. Let this rotten world call him what they willed. If her beloved was so keen on calling him that, then so be it. Joanna had sworn she would always call him by the name she'd given him. It just felt right somehow. When the Maesters had tried to take him from her she'd refused then, just as she refused them now. She no longer trust them. But she trust family, Jaime and Cersei, they'd look after him. Even after she was gone. She couldn't be there for him forever. But his siblings, Cersei and Jaime and any future children Joanna herself had would be there for him. Naruto. Yes, it was just as she'd said before. One day, she knew this boy would change the world. His little brother was a vicious fighter. Jaime Lannister realized this terrible truth relatively late in his childhood and that was his mistake. By the time he understood what Nathaniel Naruto truly was, the boy had nearly become his equal in the art of the blade. Oh yes, his baby brother was good. Very good. Better than good even. He had the potential to be something extraordinary and dangerous. The great ones always were. Some were born with a silver spoon in their mouths. Others were good at fighting. Steel sang in a clenched fist hand and daggers danced in another, a deadly dervish of death in which Jaime found himself the center of. Sparks flew through the air as their weapons collided. Once, twice, thrice, now, parry, riposte, thrust. He could scarcely deflect, much less evade those nasty little knives. Nathaniel drove at him again and again and again, keeping him on the back foot, forcing him to a corner. They were using live steel today and he almost found himself regretting it, if only because his dear sibling wasn't afraid to take a few nicks to face for a win. He'd done it before. Ladies liked scars. Naruto would have more than a few by the time he reached adulthood. Blast, but those daggers were quick. He shunted one aside, hissed as his brother cut his shoulder beneath his tunic and lashed out, delivering a brutal right hook in rebuttal. Naruto took it with a grunt, stepped back, wiped a thin line of blood from his lip and grinned. Then he came at him again. Bloody relentless. Jaime considered himself no slouch with the sword. He was skilled himself, but swordsmanship was where his martial talents both began and ended. His baby brother didn't just train with the sword. No, you see, Nathaniel was the second son. The spare, not the heir, given nothing he couldn't grasp for himself. And so he trained with whatever he could get his grubby little mitts on. Yesterday, it had been an awful axe. Today, it was those damnable dancing daggers. Tomorrow he suspected it would be a spear, one of Dornish make. Cersei had seen him drilling with it. A fist slammed into his side, shattering his thoughts and rattling his ribs through the armor he wore. Pay attention, brother Tilda. He sighed. I am, Nathaniel. His sibling scowled. Don't like being called that. It's just a name. Your name, he tutted back with a grin, easy burden to bear out. Nathaniel must have took issue with it, because he crashed into him like a falling star. A knee surged up into his groin, rendering the world white and doubling him over. A hammer fist rang his blade like a bell. In came the daggers again as he staggered. Jamie tried to parry, only to see the feint too late. His beloved brother reversed course at the last instant and gave his face an open-palmed smack in return for that right hook he'd taken earlier. Jamie recoiled with a hiss. "Gods, you're a sharp little thing," he muttered, rubbing his aching cheek. "Daggers in the dark won't get you everywhere, brother." "I disagree." Naruto grinned, slid them up his sleeves, eliciting a brief lull in their little duel. "They've gotten me precisely where I want to be. As for you..." He was still speaking when he whirled. A boot swept Jamie's legs and knocked him to the ground. He landed hard on his back. The moment he did it, Naruto jumped him. Twin daggers crossed over his throat. "Time to yield, bit brother." Another loss to his little brother. How galling. "I give." Nathaniel Naruto grinned down at him, hopped off his chest, and offered his hand. Jamie clasped it with his right and let himself be hauled upright. Stronger than he looked, this little brother of his. He stood a good head taller than him, yet his sibling hoisted him to his feet with ease. There were times when he worried about his brother. Naruto was more than he appeared. Most of Castle Rock knew that, but it was tiny, subtle displays like this that truly concerned him. He didn't make any secret of his strength and speed, nor his healing touch, not these days. Second son though he might be, he couldn't help but wonder what his little brother would be like when he was older. Naruto touched a hand to his forehead and grimaced. Jamie saw it and guided him down to a stone bench. "Headaches again?" "A little." He clicked his tongue in mild irritation. "Feels almost familiar." Jamie turned a keen eye turned on him. "Don't go mad on me now. Whatever would I do without you?" A blonde brow quirked. "Live a better life." "Don't say such things." "HRMPH. His brother grunted. "Enough about me. You need to pay attention in a fight. See." Naruto tapped a dagger to his wrist. "That's you disarmed, literally. What would you do if you lost this hand?" "I expect I'd have to learn to use my left." An elbow ribbed him good and proper. "You're shit with your left." Honest to a fault. A wry chuckle escaped him. "You really don't fight with honor, do you?" "Honor doesn't win wars. It gets men killed. Victory is all that matters." The faint sound of clapping filled the yard. "Well said." Jamie whirled, and Naruto with him. Much to his surprise, he found their Lord Father waiting for them. He looked pleased, almost grimly so, and it was that expression that set off all manner of bells in Jaime's head. "When did you arrive?" "Just this morning." Father approached them, hands clasped before him. "Your mother's due to give birth any day now. Did you think I would miss it?" He had thought so, yes. The king was increasingly erratic these days. Father was seldom the sort to smile when he returned from the capital, but he did sometimes. Jamie had learned to savor those rare moments. Tywin Lannister almost looked human when he smiled. Almost. Theirs was a powerful house, but they did not rule. No, that right fell to the dragons, the Targaryens, and a king who may or may not be mad. Just as well, Jamie had no interest in the Iron Throne. He knew well the rules of succession. Castle Rock would be his one day. Cersei would likely marry Rhaegar, and Nathaniel, well, Father would doubtlessly try to throw him at some crazed Targaryen wench down the line, or maybe some other highborn lady whenever one came of age. His brother had complained rather loudly about that. He looked fit to complain again right now, given the letter Father was now dangling before him. Jamie squinted at it, curious. He recognized that seal. Didn't it come from? "This came from the capital." Father answered for him. "For you." Nathaniel perked up and reached for it. Tywin tugged it out of his reach. "I thought we had quashed this folly of yours by now, Nathaniel. You play a dangerous game." Jamie perked up. Girl. Father had taken him to King's Landing a fortnight past. Had his little brother met someone? Who, then? It didn't make a lick of sense. The only family of any real import in the capital were the Targaryens and gods be good, surely his little brother wasn't that foolish. "How would you know?" Naruto adopted a rather mulish expression. "If you'd just give her a chance you'd see she's suffering." "You are my son." Tywin spoke over him, appearing to loom larger every moment. "A Lannister. When you marry it will be for the benefit of this family, not yourself, and certainly not for a foolish scheme such as this." He spun on one heel. eyed a nearby brazier, then flung the tiny scroll into it, heedless of the outraged noise Naruto made. You will cease this foolish pursuit and we will speak no more of this. His eyes could have made a Northman shiver in that instant. Do you understand? Father, Jamie forced himself to rally. He had to know. Who was that letter from? It matters not, he said at length. Family is everything and I will not allow either of you to drag our name through the mud. Naruto scoffed at him. With a family like this, who needs enemies? Careful now, boy, I enjoy your wit, but you tread on thin ice. Naruto lifted his chin to stare father down. Oh, dear, Jamie knew that look and it was nothing good. This could only end poorly. A distant scream pierced the tension. Cersei came hurtling around the corner, face absolutely ashen. Mother's gone into labor. In an instant, any such thoughts of the future courtships were summarily forgotten. Nathaniel didn't walk, he all but sprinted past Cersei, practically bowling her over as he raced for the bedchamber. Jamie followed a more sedate pace. What was the rush? The babe would come when it came. Would it be a girl? Her wondered, or were they to have another brother? 0.0.0.0. When her labors began, Joanna Lannister she welcomed them wholeheartedly. It was as a difficult birth, one that nearly killed her. All to bring a dwarf into the world. With his birth, she became possessed of the belief that her middle son wasn't normal. Naruto didn't left her side the entire time. Whatever he'd done had healed her, prevented her from bleeding out. Most mothers would have balked at such a display. Not Joanna. She'd sworn to love all her children, and she resolved to love this one, imperfections and all. And so she named their newest son Tyrion. She'd never forget the look on Tywin's face when he saw him. Nor Jamie or Cersei. Or Naruto. Hello, Tyrion. She'd always remember the way her second son crooned over the mewling babe in her arms. Welcome to the world. The Martells came to Castery Rock soon after Tyrion's birth. A Baron Martell and his sister Elia Martell, to be precise. By the dazed look in their eyes Naruto knew it was their first time away from Dorne, and neither brother nor sister seemed overmuch fond of anything. Not the food, not the weather, not their strange accents, nothing. Not even their own Lord Father who brought them here in the first place. He couldn't blame them. The man had gone off to discuss business with Tywin and left the four of them here in the sitting room to bond, as he put it. Which left them at a bit of an impasse, you see. They were only children. No one knew what to do. Or say, for that matter. Well, he did, but he'd prefer not to show his hand just yet. In truth, he found himself empathizing with the plight of the wayward Martell siblings. They looked lost and wholly out of their depth. He'd never been to Dorne, but he expected his reaction would be much the same if he visited their kingdom. King's Landing was crowded to be sure, yet it was nothing compared to the searing heat of the real South. Jamie leaned over to whisper in his ear. They certainly seem friendly. He elbowed his older brother in the ribs. Be nice. Where's Cersei? With mother. Came the sigh. Where else would she be? Naruto winced despite his best efforts. Of course, Cersei disdained such matters. Anyone who isn't us is an enemy, as she was often so fond of saying. She'd only grown more terse these past few weeks. Joanna's survival had been a near thing during Tyrion's birth, and has never truly gotten over that. Time mended all wounds, but for now her pain was still fresh. She would take a while to adjust. Until then, he'd need to keep an eye on her, and Tyrion. He didn't think she might be that stupid, but her emotions always ran hot where family was concerned. Which left him and Jamie to deal with this. So be it. If no one would make the first move, he supposed it fell to him. I'm gonna talk to them. Jamie didn't bother to hide his grin. Father won't like that. Oh yes, he could imagine him saying something to that effect. I didn't raise you to be this foolish. Tywin Lannister was a force to be reckoned with, at home or abroad, even with his family. But what he didn't know wouldn't hurt him. He caught the Martell siblings staring his way, plastered a winning smile across his face, and radiating confidence, walking their way. Jamie followed and let him do the talking, bless his soul. Welcome to the Rock, he offered his right hand. I'm Nathaniel. A Baron and Elia exchanged a glance between themselves. Naruto kept smiling. These days it was all too easy to slip into the guise of Nathaniel Lannister, rather than Naruto Uzumaki. Sometimes he made a game of it, seeing how long he could keep up the act and charm those around him. Oh, he loved his new family, make no mistake, but it was still a bit of a lurch sometimes when he thought of it. The irony wasn't lost on him. In his first life he'd been born to nothing, He'd clawed his way to the top with nothing but grit. Naruto Uzumaki became powerful, but he didn't have true power or influence until nearly the end. Now as Nathaniel Lannister, son of Tywin Lannister, he had wealth, influence, power. Son to the second most powerful man in all of Westeros, while retaining nearly all of his abilities from his first life. The world was his oyster. It wasn't quite the same. He missed Kurama, missed him more than words. Surely he was out there somewhere in this brave new world. He had to be, and he would find him. A stray breeze tugged at his face, drawing him back to the present. Someone had clasped his hand while he was lost in his head. A baron, no doubt, Tywin said, was a bold one. "It is a great pleasure to finally meet you, my lord." A smooth voice captured his ears. "Father speaks highly of you." Heat shot up Naruto's neck, burning into his cheeks. That voice did not belong a baron. Sure enough, glanced to the right and found Jaime had led him away, striking up a conversation with him. Traitor, he should have known. He didn't like talking to any girl that wasn't Cersei. Inevitably, his gaze was drawn back to Elia Martell. He'd once heard Joanna describe her as, and, he quoted, a gentle, good, and gracious girl, but also frail, due to her delicate health. Kind and clever, with a sweet wit. Looking at her now, he could see that much. She was a pretty girl. Bright bemused eyes beamed back at him from a dark face framed by curtains of ebony black curls. Her smile held none of Cersei's venom, and that pale yellow dress flattered her. More than that, she seemed nice, not timid, and quite willing to chew him out if he wronged her somehow. Right, protocol. He raised their hands, fingers still intertwined, and kissed her knuckles. My lady. Oh, Elia Martell did not titter and flush, but rather laughed and arched a dark brow at him. Is that how you Westerlanders greet a Dornishwoman? It is how a proper lord greets a beautiful lady, yes. He couldn't quite hide the wry smile behind his retort, less so when she snorted. Sassy girl, he liked her already. HMM. A baron's sister lowered her hand, but didn't let go of his and wound up tugging his arm down with hers in the process as her eyes flitted up to meet his. We've heard curious things about you in the South, Nathaniel Lannister. You live up to your reputation, I'll give you that. He squeezed her hand. Walk with me. I believe I shall. Elia accepted with good grace, allowing him to lead her, pausing only to crane her neck and look back. A baron, can I trust you to behave yourself while I'm gone? Her brother snorted. I could say the same of you, dear sister. She rolled her eyes. Do you have anything like the water gardens here? Water gardens. He chuckled softly as they walked. Now, we don't have one of those, but we do have a stone garden. The Dornishwoman blinked at him. How can a garden be made of stone? Naruto chuckled a little at her innocence. Let me show you. Down through the rock he led her, into the very bowels of the keep. Elia proved herself both an amiable and inquisitive guest, filling the silence between them with questions as they continued their descent. At times, it seemed she wanted to know everything. Did they still have lions in the keep? Was Lan the Clever real? Had they found Brytror, their ancestral Valyrian steel blade yet? It made for good conversation and he reveled in the chance to talk with someone new for the first time in months. In nearly no time at all they reached their destination. Here we are. Naruto swept an arm out before himself. Take a look. The stone garden was a godswood, nestled in a cave within the rock. It contained a twisted old weirwood, whose tangled roots have almost filled the cave, choking out all other growth. The face carved within had its eyes open, unlike some, and those eyes almost seemed to stare their way now, observing the two of them. Elia clutched at his hand, shivered a little. He didn't. He found the old tree comforting. It always felt like something was watching over him here, protecting him. He liked to come to this place when he was alone. It brought him small semblance of peace when his heart was troubled. Sometimes Mother joined him. Cersei had on occasion, before Tyrion was born. She'd prayed for a sister. Instead she got a deformed little brother that nearly killed her mother, a sibling she seemed to hate with all her heart. So that's a weirwood tree. He looked her way. You don't have them in Dorne. We do not. Father says they cannot grow in the hot climate. What brings you this far west? Not that I'm complaining, mind you. Father decided it was high time a baron and I saw the other 6 kingdoms. Elia flicked a strand of dark hair out her eyes. Castle Rock is merely the third one stop of many. We've already been to both Storm's End and Highgarden. Realization broke like the dawn over the narrow sea. Traveling this far meant one of two things. Either their father genuinely wished for Elia and Aberon to see the rest of the continent, or, and this was far more likely, they were touring the keeps of each kingdom for a far simpler reason. To get a better look at the sons and daughters of Westeros. That meant marriage pacts, both for Aberon and Elia alike. Was that why they were here? To find paramours? Were they after Jaime? It made a twisted sort of sense, really. Jaime was heir to Castle Rock and future Warden of the West. Not him. Why would anyone care about him? A second son was only ever a spare, after all. He shook the ugly thought off and smiled at Elia. And how do you like the kingdoms so far? In the case of Storm's End. She made a face. Wet. Highgarden was greener, but Aberon and I were not accustomed to the climate. A thought occurred to him. He pounced upon it. Well, if you dislike them, I wouldn't recommend King's Landing, then. The Princess of Dorne tilted her head just so. And why not? It smells of shit and 500,000 many people crammed in a small place. He rolled his shoulders in a shrug. To say nothing of the criminals. It's no place to start a family, let alone raise children. Elia blanched. I'll keep that in mind. It'll only get colder as you go north, you know. That earned him a cross look. We have not been to Winterfell, yet. I do not think we will be. There is nothing for us there but snow and ice. Ah, yes, he'd heard tales of the illustrious Starks. Grim bunch, they were. Had to be up there. Those northerners didn't have time to play the game, there wasn't any time for it. They were far too focused on survival. He almost envied them at times. A life almost free from endless politicking and dickering about at court. It sounded far simpler than the life he currently led. Another thought nagged at him. Is that only reason you came here? Well, Elia confessed, we were hoping to see the imp while we were here in the west. His blood ran cold. Imp. Everyone's raving about your little brother. She barreled on, heedless of his sudden stillness. They say he's a monster, that he has claws and scales. His face closed down, all traces of emotions draining away. And what do you think? That I wish to see for myself. She huffed. Naruto opened his mouth to retort. A whisper caressed his ear. Approach. It felt like, how could he describe it? A gentle breeze, warm wind caressing his very soul. Both pleasant and unpleasant at the same time. He spun, startled by the sudden voice. Did you hear that? Elia frowned at him, utterly baffled. I heard nothing. He shook his head. I thought I heard a voice. Do not ignore this, son of fire. There it was again. Something tickled his senses. Inexorably, his gaze was drawn to the weirwood tree. Approach. The voice or voices were all but a command now. You were needed. Absurd. Trees didn't whisper. They certainly didn't talk, did they? He edged close to the weirwood, touched a hand to the pale, scarred bark. In an instant he found himself falling. He opened his eyes and saw. It was like looking into a cracked mirror. He saw and heard countless things at once, flashes of things that were and was, events that should and should not be. And he heard 3 words. Burn them all. Aerys Targaryen shrieked of traitors and turncoats from the Iron Throne. A lion broke bread with a snake and wolf and a dragon while King's Landing erupted in a plume of wildfire. A scarlet dragon egg was pressed into someone's hands. A great shadow fell over the capital. Kurama's laughter rang in his head. He heard the last gasps of a dying woman, the awful ring of steel striking steel amidst the screams of dying men. The wail of terrified children. Saw a sword plunge through the Mad King's chest. Another swept in from the side, took his head clean off at the shoulders and sent it spinning across the floor. Burn them all. Someone climbed over the Mad King's corpses, lowered themselves onto the Iron Throne and sat there. He couldn't see their face. It was like looking at a shadow. The more he tried to focus, the more it seemed to shift and writhe before his eyes. A crown was placed upon the shadow's head. Men and women knelt before him as one. Ice crept in from the north, inching toward the capital. Dead men marched on living. They were met by light and dragons. And there, rising above it all, those damnable 3 words haunted him still. Burn them all. Nathaniel. Someone grabbed him by the shoulder and yanked. Hard. Snap out of it. Reality snapped back like a rubber band. Naruto. He noticed Jaime and Aberon standing nearby with a distraught Elia. His brother was gripping his left arm, fingers biting down hard enough to cause pain. When had they caught up to them? And why did he look so pale? What's wrong? He squinted their way, not understanding why they all looked so distressed. Why the long faces? You've been staring at the weirwood for the last hour. Jaime released his arm. Elia had to come find us. What's gotten into you? Had How did he explain what he'd just seen? Did he even dare speak of it? They'd think him mad. The world already had one madman too many. A cursory glance at Elia only made him all the more concerned. Her fan face looked pale indeed, her eyes terribly wide. She was holding his hand again, but she'd been holding his hand when he touched the tree, hadn't she? What had she seen? What indeed? Just daydreaming, I guess. He shook himself free, mustered a smile he didn't feel, and stifled a yawn with the back of his hand. Probably trained a little too much last night. Must have dozed off on my feet. Yes, Elia seized on the change of topic with gusto, grasping at it like the lifeline it was. Something had rattled her. He wondered what it was. I hear you're quite skilled with the spear. Jamie barked a laugh, all too eager to forget what he'd seen. Skilled, she says. That's putting it mildly. He nearly took my hand off yesterday. Kurama would have howled with laughter were he still within him. Naruto settled for his own, strained though it was. I'm good with daggers, too. His smile became a grin. The sword as well. As that's so, he must have caught a baron's attention now, because Elia's brother slung an arm around his shoulder and drew him his way with a sly smile all his own. Care to prove it? Ah, now they were speaking the same language. He squared his shoulders and returned his grin tenfold. Is that a challenge? Wouldn't want to hurt that pretty face of yours. A hand settled on his shoulder. Come now, you are the second son of your family, while I am merely the third of mine. I'm sure they won't mind. He quirked a blonde brow his way. They might mind when I knock you on your ass. This time, Jamie didn't bother to hide his laugh. Most little lordlings or ladies would have given up the goose then and there, cut their losses and called it a day. A baron was not most. He was a prince of Dorne, perhaps even heir to Sunspear someday if he played his cards right. Any prince to be would be trained in combat. They must be, if only to defend themselves. And if a baron was offering him a duel, who was he to refuse? Real men let their fists doing the talking, or their weapons, if they were particularly keen on them. You might not be so fortunate. Elia clicked her tongue at him. A baron. What? He tutted at her. I merely wish to see if your dear lion has claws. She scoffed. He isn't my dear anything, little brother. Then why are you still holding his hand, sister? Jamie chuckled. He has you there. Elia couldn't free her hand fast enough. Her face had gone an alarming shade of red. Naruto started laughing. It was easy to lose himself in the byplay, the back and forth. To forget what he'd seen when he touched the tree. But he couldn't. Not completely. He didn't think he ever could, no matter how much he might wish otherwise. Found you, Tilda. Cersei came rushing down the steps leading to the stone garden. She took one look at his distraught expression, realized something was wrong, and launched herself at him. Slim arms wrapped around his head and drew him close to her. For once, he found himself grateful for her presence. Her clinginess, even, strange as it might sound, he wanted to be held by someone in this instant. Cersei recognized that somehow, that something was bothered him, and he allowed it. Even if she was his sister. That gratitude faded when he saw Cersei's expression. His sister was smirking at Elia, wearing that insufferable little I know something that you don't grin he'd come to despise over the years. It soured any lingering semblance of peace he might have felt. Why are you all hiding down here in the depths? She tutted at the Martells. Don't you want to see our baby brother? Of course we do, Lady Lannister. A baron replied, but we didn't know the way to the nursery. Well, now you shall. She released him, turned and beckoned as though she were the queen herself. Come, this way. Naruto exchanged an uneasy look with Jamie. His brother shrugged helplessly. What else could he do? Up they went once more, retracing their steps, the journey made in silence. No one spoke, no one dared, if only because they dreaded what might lay in wait ahead. Soon enough, Cersei led them to the nursery. Mercifully, Naruto found no blood within. He could hear Tyrion in his little crib. He immediately noted Joanna's absence, however. Where's mother? With the septa, she replied primly, praying. His eyes narrowed. What are you up to? Nothing at all, brother of mine. She cooed. Still smiling she turned to face the Martell siblings, grasping at the veil over. Look at him. She unveiled the crib. Behold our monster. A baron and Elia peered at him. The latter gasped, not in shock or horror, but sympathy. That's not a monster. That's a baby. A baron leaned in to get a better look and frowned. His head may be a bit large, his arms and legs are small, but he's not a monster. In that instant Naruto knew he'd be lifelong friends with him, to the last of his days. If he'd called Tyrion a monster he would have decked him. It doesn't matter, Cersei sneered, heedless to their byplay. He nearly killed my mother. Everyone says he will die soon. I hope they're right. She reached in and pinched his nose shut, drawing a distressed cry from the poor babe. He shouldn't not have lived this long. Crack. Why did his hand hurt so much? Naruto looked down. Jaime gasped and he saw why. His arm was extended, knuckles clenched into a fist. There was blood on his hands. He didn't remember moving, just a flash of anger. Cersei stumbled back, gaping girlishly at him as she clutched at her bloody nose. Little brother, you hit me. How dare you? Anger sparked again. His fist unclenched and his arm moved. Crack. Cersei recoiled, now clutching at the throbbing red handprint he'd left upon her right cheek. How dare I? How dare you? His words cracked out again like a whip. I'll do worse than that if you touch Tyrion again. Father will punish you, she shrieked. Just wait until I tell him. Go ahead, see if I care, spoiled sow. Out she stumbled. Jaime chased after with a rueful sigh. Naruto felt a brief bang of guilt and made to follow, if only for his brother's sake. My friend. A baron slung an arm around his shoulder, stopping him short. I think you and I will get along famously. Elia nodded her agreement and smiled sweetly at him. Naruto felt his heart skip a beat. Oh, dear, he'd not planned for this. 0.0.0. Tywin stared at his son from behind his desk. To his credit, Nathaniel didn't falter, nor had he protested when summoned. On the contrary, his second son impressed him. Rather than bow and beg for mercy as any normal child might when faced with the wrath of his father, this surly boy raised his chin, set his face in a determined scowl, and matched him glare for glare. He'll need to watch that in the future. A tell like that gives him away. Nathaniel had a bad habit of doing such when threatened, squaring up his shoulders, planting his feet and standing his ground, no matter the odds. Doubtless he'd gotten that fro his mother. Joanna wasn't afraid to give him a piece of her mind if need be, and neither was he. For if his lady wife was the sort fight a dragon to protect her children, then Nathaniel would happily slay one to keep Castle Rock safe. He was stubborn, with a good heart and the will to match. It was going to get him killed one of these days. But sitting here staring at one another wasn't going to get them anywhere. Tywin steepled his fingers in the silence. I understand you struck your sister. ... I did. May I ask why? Nathaniel clicked his tongue. You know why. She was being a bitch. Well, this time, Nathaniel broke the silence first. What's it to be, then? Whipping, flogging, are you going to take 2 of my fingers? By the 7, the boy was all jagged edges when he wanted to be. At times like these, Nathaniel seemed sharper beyond his years, an old man in a youngster's body. Nonsense, surely, snarks and grumpkins, that sort of thing. He'd simply taken to his lessons better than most. Nathaniel still didn't budge. Tywin felt the ghost of a smile tug at the corner of his mouth. Nathaniel had a way of doing that to him, drawing a smirk out of him when few else could. But it didn't change what he'd done. Do you know why I'm angry? He began to drum his fingers against the desk, from smallest to large, one after the other. Because I struck Cersei. Tywin gave him a moment to think. And then, no. His boy blinked, not quite comprehending his statement. No, Tywin replied, drawing out the word. You were well within your rights. I should have taken a firmer hand with her long ago. Your brother has been of no use on that front. With any luck you slapped some sense into her today. And if I haven't? Then you are free to take her to task again if she acts in such an unbecoming manner. The boy's brow furrowed. I could make her a better person. But if you're not angry about that, then why am I here? Now was as good a time for a lesson as any. Tell me, why do you believe you are here? Nathaniel squinted at him, frowned now. Because of the spectacle I made. Good. Tywin nearly leapt from his desk as he shouted the word. You're finally asking the right questions. I am cross with you not because you struck your sister but because you did so before witnesses. A brief pause not to let the weight of his words sink. You made us appear weak before the Martell children, and although their father was thankfully not there to see, they've surely told him by now. She was pinching Tyrion's. Tywin held up a hand to forestall an argument. I am aware. Jaime told me. I didn't say your actions were unjustified. But you will not fight in public. Do you understand? Nathaniel hung his head and kicked at the floor. As you wish. Blast. He couldn't stand to see the boy, the one he'd begun to pin his hopes on, sulk like that. He tapped a finger against the desk. "Come here." His son obeyed. "What do you see?" Nathaniel glanced to the map sprawled across his desk. "Westeros, the Seven Kingdoms." And a moment of silence. "Legacies, the future." "Yes." He stabbed a finger down on Castley Rock. "There's a reason the name Lannister is remembered, not that of the Castleys. It's the family name that lives on. Not your brother's personal glory, not Cersei's deluded notions of power, but family. Family is important. It is all that lives on. It must. It will." Nathaniel looked to him. "Will it?" Tywin spread his hands across the desk and leaned forward. "Your brother wants to be a Kingsguard with no idea of what that horrid position entails. Your sister rails at anyone who dares to oppose her, all the while thinking herself more clever than anyone alive, and your Tyrion is my brother." Nathaniel met his gaze evenly. "And your son." That much he could not deny, no matter his deformity nor the danger he'd placed Joanna in. "He is my son, if he lives." "You think he won't?" He shrugged. "Dwarves have been known to die young. You know this." "I do." Something dark passed through the boy's gaze. "And I'll be watching over him to make sure he does live. He's family." HRRM. He understood that, at least. Perhaps there was hope for Nathaniel yet. Tywin took his hand from the map and brought it down on his son's shoulder. "We must appear united, always. Do you understand?" Nathaniel nodded. "Someday you will marry and take a wife of your own." He paused, considered the matter for a moment, grappled with it, then spoke his heart's true desire. "When the day comes that you do, seek out a good match. Find a partner that pleases you, someone with whom you can spend the rest of your life with, as I have. That will make all the difference in the years to come. And should you father any bastards." His boy stood a little straighter and clasped both hands behind his back. "I'll see them looked after." "As you should. If your brother does become a Kingsguard, you will be named my heir. Do you understand what that means?" Another nod. "I'll rule the rock after you die." "You just might." Gods be good, at least he'd been blessed with one child that listened. Which made it all the more important that he understand. "You possess gifts not seen since the doom of Valyria. I would have you keep them secret, and if you cannot manage that, use them sparingly." Mulish defiance burned in the boy's gaze. "Mother would have died without them." I know." Tywin fought down a shudder at the ghastly image his mind conjured. To even dwell on such a thing, no. He dare not, and I shall spend my entire life repaying the debt I owe you for her own. But you have enemies enough without making more. Pycelle already fears you, and he commands a great deal of influence among the maesters. Here at last, a hint of Lannister anger burned through the boy's bright eyes. "Dodgy old coot. I don't trust him. He's not half as senile as he claims to be." A cold joy awoke in Tywin's heart. "No, he is not. He remains loyal to the Lannisters, but you would do well to mind your food and drink." "I will." Silence stretched between them. Tywin let it linger for a moment longer, then chose another avenue of attack. "Elia Martell, what do you think of her?" Nathaniel wasn't stupid. He caught on at once. He knew what he was getting at. She's nice, sweet, but clever, and not afraid to speak her mind. Interesting. He'd scorned suitors before. What had changed? "You find her tolerable, then?" "We just met," Nathaniel retorted. "She's wild, free, and exciting. Your mother thinks she would be a good match for you." Jaime would have argued. Cersei would have flew into a rage. Nathaniel did none of these things. He flushed yes, but he didn't burst into protests. He knew his duty to the family. "I just met her today." He did not plea when he spoke. "She seems all right. And you may yet meet her again if the gods are good." "Thought you didn't believe in the gods." "I didn't, until you were born." Nathaniel didn't rise to the bait. He understood. Their house was strong, but their foothold was still precarious outside of Westeros. Even after he'd eradicated the Rhines and Tarbecks, many a noble lady had vied for his hand, for he was hand of the king. Joanna had bested them all. He'd slighted many a lord and lady when he chose to marry within the family. Old grudges like that tended to fester, growing rotten over time. He'd had the chance to choose. His children might not so fortunate. Nathaniel aside, Jaime and Cersei must marry for the sake of the family, for advantage. Even Tyrion, if he survived, would be expected to do such. Speaking of advantage. "You are still writing to the Queen, I trust." Nathaniel slumped where Ahe stood. Uncle Kevin noticed, didn't he? He might have. Truth be told, Tywin was inordinately grateful for his younger brother's keen eye. In the weeks following Tyrion's difficult birth, he'd not spoken with Nathaniel on the matter of his secret correspondence. There had been much to do, and as he was set to return to his duties in King's Landing soon, Eris was demanding his return, practically howling for it. Really, his mind was preoccupied with a great many tasks. But not Kevin. He hadn't failed to notice the ravens coming to Anne from the rock. A short while ago, he had told him to cease such frivolities. But now, the realm was beginning to tip. Who could say which way it would fall? Those harmless letters between him and Queen Rayella might make all the difference in the years to come. And if there was a war? A mad idea entered Tywin's mind. He did not dismiss it, but instead shelved it away for later use. If that's your one vice, then so be it. He rounded the desk and planted a hand on his shoulder. But for God's sake, be careful and don't use your name when you write to her. Eris would be all too happy to tear you away from Castle Rock. From your mother and I. Nathaniel wrinkled his nose. Don't wanna be a Kingsguard. Too many oaths. Tywin arched a pale brow. And if the king demands it, I'll tell him exactly what I think of him. Tywin actually laughed at that, a rare bark of genuine laughter that echoed through the keep. It surprised even him. He could imagine it now. Nathaniel already held a low opinion of Eris, one they both shared. For a single mad moment, he saw it in his mind's eye. Mad king indeed. Nathaniel scoffed and spat at the feet of Eris. I've seen far worse things than you, Eris Targaryen, horrors that would make you seem sane. You won't take me. You can't. You're weak. Good. He shook himself from the daydream and chuckled ruefully. Then, more softly now, good. You've more sense in your head than Jaime. I'll say it again, you're blessed with abilities that few possess. You're blessed to belong to the most powerful family in the kingdoms. And you're still blessed with youth. And what are you going to do with these blessings, He tilted his head to regard him, one lion to another. Be a glorified bodyguard. Nathaniel shook his head. No, that's not me. Because you have ambition. Another nod. Tywin was seldom the sort to smile, save on rare occasions. He did so now. Ambition. Yes, that was the difference between Nathaniel and Jaime, between him and Cersei as well. Jaime wanted to swing a sword all his life because he was good at it. Nothing more. Cersei wanted to be his heir, but that could not happen, nor would it, because she was not always of sound mind. Nathaniel wasn't satisfied with being the second son. He wanted to rise in the world. With talents like his, he would. He was a true lion, and woe betide those who met his claws. Which is precisely why I need you to become the man you were always meant to be. Tywin squeezed his shoulder, and when that wasn't enough, drew him into a firm if brief embrace. Drawing back, he gave his head a pat. Not tomorrow, not next week, now. You must be prepared should the worst happen. Now, back to the matter of the Martell girl. The door to his chambers swept open. Joanna marched through, wearing a dangerous smile. Oh, dear. Tywin knew that smile. He knew it far too well. Dear husband, surely you weren't discussing our son's future without me, were you? Tywin sank back into his seat. It was the wisest course of action, given her expression. You were resting. I did not wish to disturb you. No, you simply decided to mention the Martell girl on a lark. She cast a glance to a bemused Nathaniel and unbent enough to kiss the boy's head. Go check on your little brother, dear. She tousled his golden hair with one hand, smiling softly. Your father and I have much to discuss. Nathaniel needed no further prodding. He scampered out and slammed the door behind him. Tywin pinched the bridge of his nose. Was that necessary? I deemed it so. Joanna sat upon the desk, and propped one leg up, exposing a pale thigh to his wanting eyes. So yes, quite necessary. His throat went dry. Gods, but she knew how to torment him. How are you feeling? Very much recovered, thanks to our son. She granted him a lascivious wink and realization dawned. Exceptional, even, and lonely. Her gaze pierced his. You're leaving for King's Landing tomorrow. It was not a question. She always saw right through him. I am. And you wanted him out of the room. I did. She grinned. Now then, will you be taking your trousers off, or shall I do it for you? Tywin stood. Joanna caught him halfway, crushing her mouth against his. He swept an arm across the desk, clearing it, pressing her atop it. Far be it from him to refuse his lady wife. 0.0.0.0. Naruto heard the noises behind the door and closed his ears to them. On one hand, he was hardly a stranger to that sort of thing in his first life. But still, these were his second parents. His new family. It was like imagining Minato and Kushina going at it. His mind recoiled. Ew, 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 not thinking about that. They're gonna give me another sibling at this rate, and wouldn't that be amusing? It was a strange thing indeed to be the middle child of 4, but he wasn't about to complain. He wouldn't mind another brother, or sister. Maybe another girl would keep Cersei sane. Or not, he really couldn't understand her sometimes. She'd shown a flash of kindness down in the stone garden, only to turn and be a vicious little witch minutes later. He'd figure her out one of these days. But not today. In the end he left his new parents to it and let his feet carry him back to Tyrion's nursery. By some stroke of luck or fate he didn't stumble into Cersei on the way. He expected the Septa was giving her a tongue lashing. Or maybe Jaime was. Not, he decided. Not Jaime. He adored Cersei, and he didn't want to think of them right now. Quick steps carried him to his little brother's cradle. A pleased babble greeted his arrival. Good, he remembered him. Hey, little brother. He let the facade drop, just for him, and, how are we doing? A tiny hand pawed at one of his fingers but couldn't quite reach with those stubby arms. His heart lurched and he reached in the rest of the way, allowing the infant to grasp his hand. For some reason he found himself fiercely protective of him, dwarf or no. He hadn't asked to be born this way, just as he hadn't asked to be a Jinchuriki all those years ago. In a way, they were the same. Kurama would have scolded him for such soft sentiment, but there it was. Someone had to look out for the little guy. Jaime should, but even if he wouldn't, he'd be here for him. His gaze strayed back to Tyrion. Could he heal him? Fix his dwarfism? Did he dare try when he wasn't even a year old? Kurama had left him, but his healing talents remained. Shouldn't he use them? Was it not his duty to help those in need, whenever they may need it? He reached a hand toward Tyrion but winced at the last instant. Doing so when his little brother was so young might well kill him outright. It would entail breaking bones and all other manner of unpleasantness, building his body. But he could help him later in life, even if only meant a few inches at a time, he would. There, he stroked his head, I won't let anyone hurt you. The door creaked open behind him, then shut again. He blew out a sigh. Jaime, that better be you. A knife slammed into his back. The world lurched. Naruto's sixth sense screamed, but he did not. Pain. He'd almost forgotten what it felt like after all this time. He could feel the blade buried to the hilt in his back, sliding against the muscle of his shoulder, but it all seemed dim, somehow. He'd taken worse wounds than this. It barely tickled. He pivoted to face his attacker, a man clad in all black. Their face was strangely familiar. He blew out a sigh. Definitely not Jaime. His attacker drew another knife and lunged. Even in this weaker body of his reflexes and strength remained. He was no stranger to pain, and the dagger hadn't struck anything vital. He caught the hand trying to end his life by the wrist, stilling it an inch from his chest. At that angle it would have punched up into his ribs and pierced his heart. In his grasp, that blade didn't budge an inch. That vaguely familiar visage stared back at him, rid with confusion. Naruto squinted at it as he grappled with his attacker. Aha! He recognized that beard and those silver-gray eyes at long last. Marcus, one of the castle servants. He'd known the man for years. Why did this? It didn't make a lick of sense, nor did the flicker of surprise in his eyes. They'd thought to kill him twice now, and both times, they'd failed. A spark of anger flitted through their gaze. So he cut it out. In a single seamless movement he reached up, grabbed the dagger still sheathed in his shoulder, and tore it free. Then he slashed it across their face. That should have been the end of things. It wasn't. The face of Marcus fell away beneath his borrowed blade as they spun away. Literally peeled back and struck the floor to reveal another, one he didn't know. That face stared at him impassively. Naruto hissed out a breath. A faceless man. Were they here for Tyrion? No, that didn't make sense. Any common cutthroat could try to kill him. So why send? Oh, he understood now. They were here for him, weren't they? Someone had put a price on his head. He almost felt flattered. A wry laugh escaped him as sweat beaded his brow. What's the going price for the son of Tywin Lannister these days? They didn't answer. Of course they didn't. He straightened up with a wince. Right, then. Faceless men often worked in pairs, so where was? A shadow dropped from the ceiling. He twisted aside at the last instant, grunting only a little as a sword kissed his right cheek, then snapped a kick into their ribs. His attacker hissed in pain and tumbled away, crashing into their comrade. The reprieve was brief, but he used it to his advantage and filled his lungs with air. Guards. His voice boomed out. Over here, guards. He looked back just in time to parry a dagger that would have taken his left eye. Sparks sprayed as steel struck steel. Over his shoulder he regarded the second attacker from before, a svelte woman even now rising from the floor. He didn't recognize her face. She hadn't killed one of the servants as her companion had. It changed nothing. Dead was dead. They would be soon. A boy is afraid, the girl intoned solemnly as she approached. A boy only makes his death more painful by resisting. Ah, this one was arrogant. He scoffed. Two could play that game. A girl should be terrified. She blinked. Of whom? You. Yes. Naruto didn't deign to say the word aloud. Why say anything to dead men and women? Pivoting, he parried a slash, ducked another, pulling upon the natural energy in the air as he did. He pulled hard. Blue orbs smoldered into gold, amber dust shimmering over his eyelids. Old, familiar strength rushed through him. His next punch shattered ribs and flayed flesh. The first faceless man stumbled back, clutching at his bloody side. A dagger swiped down on his arm and shattered. Do you have any idea who I am? He twirled his borrowed dagger over his knuckles. No, how could you? That's all right, you'll learn. A single step put him between them. The world dissolved into a mad whirlwind of motion. He parried a dagger with a wrist, caught the woman's blade in his free fist and shattered it with a single squeeze. He snatched up one of the shards and punched backward, burying it in the belly of the first faceless man. It didn't go as deep as he would have liked. He felt his body growing sluggish. Poison. Of course they'd poisoned their blades. Poison hadn't killed him in the last life and it wouldn't kill him in this. It barely even slowed him down now. An annoyed backhand drove the now weaponless girl away, giving him time to round on her wounded companion. They slashed at him. Weak. He slapped it aside. Now it ends. Naruto pounced on them and tackled them to the floor. He landed on their chest, all but mounting them, and grabbed their skull with both hands, plunged his fingers into their eye sockets. Hands scrabbled at his face, but he wouldn't be denied. From there he took a page from Gregor Clegane's book. He squeezed. The faceless man screamed and screamed and screamed, until his head burst like a ripe melon. Bloody viscera spattered his face. Covered in it, he stood and turned to face the woman who yet remained. She faltered. Huh. Faceless men didn't flinch. The girl must be new. What are you? To you, death. Now run. He cast her dead comrade's blade down at her feet. Tell all of Bravos what you saw here today. Go now, before I change my mind. She stepped back, knelt, laid her dagger at his feet, and flung herself out the nearest window. The door crashed open a heartbeat later. Gold eyes shimmered back into blue. Adrenaline failed him and the poison caught up with him. Naruto tried to take a step, only for his legs to buckle. Someone caught him before he could dash his head against the stones. He looked up and saw Circe's terrified face staring down at him. Oh, someone had cut her cheek. Don't die, she begged, shaking him hard. Please, you can't die. I'm not gonna die, he tried to say, I'm just damn sleepy. But words wouldn't come. He blacked out. In the days that followed, Naruto swam in and out of consciousness. This was not death. In truth he would have much rather preferred it to this hellish torment. This was much more annoying than simply being dead. He was aware of everything, every ache, every pain, every injury, but unable to move. What had a maester once called it? Lucid dreaming. Yes, that was it. The poison left him a prisoner in his own body. His blood felt like it was on fire. He would wake one moment then fall into slumber the next, and when he did, his dreams were dark and filled with dreary, fevered things. If he still had Kurama, he could have fought it off in a day. Now he had to beat it back the hard way. He'd been foolish, lowering his guard like that in his own home. Never again. And as he dreamed, he heard voices. It is a miracle he still lives, my lord. The poison is a potent one. That was undoubtedly Pycelle speaking. Most would have passed 3 days ago. 3 days. Had he been asleep that long? Curious that said poison is missing from your own stores. He knew Tywin's voice anywhere. How inconvenient. My lord, I have always served the House of Lannister. Always. So you say. Know this. If he dies, so do you. No, no, no. Pycelle hadn't done this. He had to tell them, warn them. He lacked the strength to open his eyes, but he still had control of his arms and legs. It took a supreme effort of will on his part to move the former, but move it he did, slapping a hand down on the bed. A harsh bang echoed through the room. He heard a sharp gasp behind it and imagined both men rounding on him. Gods, his throat fell so dry. Not dead yet. Tywin was at his side in a flash. He felt the man grab his hand. You must be strong. Who attacked you? No point in conserving energy. He used his to gasp out 2 words. Faceless men. Tywin was silent for a terribly long time. And then, how many? 2, he rasped. Killed 1. Scared the other away. Preposterous. Pycelle's voice sputtered somewhere beside him. How does one frighten a faceless man? By killing them. Naruto hissed back. The Martells, are they safe? Are they all right? They are. They have returned to Dorne. Elia left for you. Good. He'd been the only target, then. That was a relief. His lungs hurt so much. So very much. Need to rest now. Tired. Save your strength, we'll speak more when you wake. When, not if. Even now father acted like he could simply will death away. Tywin father said something else. On the verge of sleeping, Naruto almost didn't hear him. Almost. Send the ravens. Pycelle wheezed. Is that wise? I will tell you what is wise. Do it, now. The ghost of a smile tugged at Naruto's face. Ha, the wrath of the lion had been unleashed. He almost pitied whoever was responsible. Their death would be slow. When the darkness of slumber came for him once again, this time, he went with it willingly. 0.0.0.0. They attacked my son. 4 words. 4 words and everyone seated at the high table before Tywin Lannister flinched. 4 words, and yet they couldn't possibly begin to describe the sheer breadth of rage that coursed through the Warden of the West in this moment. Oh, the rage, the hate, the wrath. He was well through the fire and the flames now and into ice. Frigid and cold, a blizzard to make even the fiercest storm in the north seem a mild breeze by comparison. His very blood felt arctic. It was a miracle his heart was still beating. Who would do such a thing? Who would dare strike at him, at his children in the heart of his domain? They'd targeted Nathaniel, not him, not Joanna, not Jaime and Cersei, or even baby Tyrion in his crib. No, they'd gone for his son, his hope, his legacy. Who would dare? Tywin could think of many possibilities, several of whom would want him dead. He had no shortage of enemies. But few possessed the Mons or money to strike at Castle Rock in such a manner. His son had killed one of his would-be killers before the poison hobbled him. How he took pride in that, while the other appeared to have fled rather than fight him. He did not dare leave the rock until his recovery. Aerys could come crawling up here if he wanted him back. Which, once again begged the question. Who had the funds? Who had the motivation? The maesters of Old Tuan were one such entity, but unlikely. They were not foolish enough to provoke him. Many a magister across the narrow sea might command such wealth, but few would be foolish enough to provoke him. Which left Aerys. Could it be possible? He almost didn't want to consider it, though it was quite likely. Who but a madman would do something so brash? He likely knew Nathaniel had gifts. Perhaps he thought him a mage. Perhaps he was. Perhaps that was why he did it. Jealousy, petty spite, mindless base cruelty. He'd long lusted after Joanna and never quite forgiven her for spurning his affections. Who could say? Once upon a time, Aerys had been a good man, a decent man, a sane man. But that man was dead, and if not dead, dying a little more each day. If it truly was Aerys, then the ghost of his memory wouldn't save him. He would act, but he would do so careful. The so-called dragon would die a death of 1,000 pinpricks. The house that puts family first survives. And so Tywin did. He held the secret close, even as he acted to protect the family. And so he summoned those of the family most trusted into this room, locked the doors and commanded both the Mountain and the Hound to stand guard outside. The brothers Clegane had standing orders to kill anyone who approached. That, at least, should keep word from reaching the spider's ears, for a time. Varys would learn of this eventually, of course. A gathering like this was impossible to miss. Joanna stood beside him, rocking a restless Tyrion in her arms. A fretful Cersei and Jaime sat together close by, exchanging anxious glances. Even his own siblings were in attendance. Loyal and faithful Kevan, his gaze sharp as ever. Restless Tygot, and ever-japing Garyon. Jenna fretted over the twins, whispering soothing words to them to keep them from tears. Tywin appreciated her efforts, though he refused to say it aloud. He couldn't comfort them yet. Not yet. Not until this matter was dealt with. His siblings differed on their course of action. Kevan wanted to call the banners. Jenna demanded proof before they acted. Tyget advocated telling the realm of this attack, if not the culprit the better, to protect their families. Garion was silent, almost eerily so. No jokes from his younger brother today. There was a dark, haunted look in his eyes. He said not a word. You know why you are here. Tywin looked upon them all, commanding their attention with but a glance. If another house can strike at one of our own with impunity, we are no longer a house to be respected or feared. I'm in this world a little while longer to defend the Lannisters, to defend my blood, your blood, and I will not stand idly by and let shadows in the dark strike at us. Nor will any of you. This is what we will do. He detailed his plans to them further, speaking long and at length. His family listened. Not a soul objected. Now, all of you out. A pause followed as he looked to one of them in particular. Not you. Jaime paused at the door. 0.0.0.0. Father was furious. One look was all it took. Jaime had never seen him quite like this before. It terrified him. None of that icy fury was sent his way, and yet he quivered beneath it all the same. He'd always seemed so unshakable, immovable like Castle Rock itself. But his father was not a rock. He was a lion, and he had his claws. Today, he was reminded. Mother paused to kiss his forehead before she left the room. Uncle Kevin clasped his shoulder and shooed Cersei out with his aunt and uncles. He barely had time to share a look with her, then she was gone. All the while, father stared at him. He didn't say a word, until the door closed. Jaime had thought himself prepared. When he finally spoke, he wasn't. Come here. Tywin beckoned. We have work to do. He stepped closer. And what work is that? Vengeance. His father's face was grim. Tell me, what would you do to protect your brother? As if he need ask such a thing. I'd do anything, you know that. Father tilted his head. Anything, you say. 0.0.0.0. Tyrion was crying. The poor babe hadn't stopped crying since they'd left the room. There, sweetling, Joanna crooned, rocking him in our arms. Have faith, your brother will be fine. He had to live, he must. He was her boy, her golden boy, her miracle child. If he died, the world would hear the lioness roar. She would burn Bravos to the ground. 0.0.0.0. Her little brother wouldn't wake up. No matter what Pycelle did. No matter what he tried. Nathaniel resisted all treatment. He lay in his bed, still and pale, barely breathing. Looking upon him now, Cersei felt her heart clench. She had never feared death before today, never once thought it might come for her and hers. She'd always thought herself untouchable, invincible. Death was for the common folk. Disease for peasants. Poison for fools who dared to rise against House Lannister. Never once had she thought the latter would strike here. But it had. Death had visited Castle Rock, and it wanted Nathaniel. So very badly. She knelt by his side, clasped her hands, and closed her eyes. Let him live, she prayed to the gods as she'd never prayed before. Let him live, and I promise I'll change. I swear I'll be a better sister. A better person. I swear it, by the old gods and the new. Even to Tyrion. The words tasted like ash in her mouth. Cersei choked them down all the same. I promise, I promise, I promise. She didn't know if she could keep that promise, or if the gods would even listen to her bargain. But if meant her brother, her perfect golden little brother who had toddled after her from the moment he could walk, would live. She would gladly give her all. Let him live and I'll give you everything. All that I am. She squeezed her shut eyes tight, trying to will her prayer into existence. Every bit of it. Please, please, please. She wasn't the only one praying. But how could she possibly know such? Nearly a world away, a queen was praying for entirely different reasons. 0.0.0.0. Hope. How long had it been since she'd felt hope? Queen Rhaella clutched the letter to her chest, exhaled quickly, and dared to look at it again. His latest reply was simple. 3 little words written in a loose scrawl. Let me help. The queen knew had long wondered at the identity of her writing paramour, although the letter bore no signature and proper seal upon the wax. She'd been exchanging many such letters with him. She assumed it was a he based on his penmanship these past few moons. This particular reply was, by far, the most provocative. She knew what he was implying, what he was suggesting, what he wanted to do. Kill the king. Such thoughts were treason, the darkest of such. Perhaps it had been a mistake to write to respond to that first fateful letter. But she was so lonely. She had no friends here save the maester, the one who helped her ferry these letters in the first place. Sometimes she wondered who her secret paramour was. She knew he was from the West, from Castle Rock, but that was all. He was certainly bold enough in his letters to her. Few dared speak ill of the Mad King these days. Those who had often lost their tongues or found themselves dipped into wildfire. An awful fate, both of those. She knew Eris would inflict far worse upon her if he ever learned the truth. But surely talking to a stranger was no sin. Her face flushed. It was a sin, the darkest of sins. She didn't care. She wanted to be free. She wanted to be loved. She wanted more than this gilded cage. Steeling herself, she crumpled up the scroll in her fist and flung it into the fireplace, just as she had each and every one that came before. One could not leave even the slightest scrap behind for Eris to find. It smoldered and crackled there under her gaze, burning away. With each passing moment she felt her heart hammer beneath her breast. She watched the flames, making sure every scrap of precious paper burned away to ash, until even that was gone. Only then did she dare breathe. Eris mustn't see. He must never know. If he did, just thinking about it made her shiver. With a soft, shuddering breath, she snatched up her quill and inkwell, alongside a piece of parchment. Quickly, she had to write quickly and send a raven to Castle Rock while her so-called husband was distracted. He was busy burning someone at the moment. Rayella could hear their screams from here. She didn't want to know who, if only because she knew what always came after, what always came after. Gritting her teeth she went to work and began to pen her reply. It might take days, weeks, even months for an answer. But she dared to pray, and hope. 0.0.0.0. Curious. Varys tutted softly. Perhaps this was a secret Eris need not know. 0.0.0.0. The Mad King cackled at the smoldering corpse before him, oblivious to the steam swirling around his head. Ah, wildfire, the sweetest of all fires. His enemies would burn. 0.0.0.0. News of the vicious attack spread across the whole of Westeros. Lords and ladies one and all heard the words. They kept their children close. 0.0.0.0. You will not leave the keep today, Lyanna. But why not, father? No buts. That goes double for your brothers. His surly girl stomped outside, swearing like a sailor under her breath. Rickard Stark, Warden of the North and Lord of Winterfell, bowed his head toward the table and heaved a sigh. She would hate him today, but understand tomorrow. This was for the best. 0.0.0.0. Elia cast a wistful glance to the horizon. Nathaniel mustn't die, he must not. She'd be terribly cross if he did. 0.0.0.0. The answer is no, Robert. You and your brothers will not go outside, not today. Piss on that, old man. You've kept us in the keep for days. One more word and I'll cuff you. The young lord grit his teeth. Fine, father. 0.0.0.0. Prince Rhaegar attacked the practice dummy with a snarl. If he hit it hard enough, he could forget his father's laughter. He hated being confined to the Red Keep. Loathed it. He wanted to be out there. With the people. He was a dragon. 0.0.0.0. Naruto fell. His mind plummeted through space and time and sky and earth as he slept, falling, falling, falling. He saw many things. Armies marching. Fire. Blood. A raven with 3 eyes flew beside him. There in the sky, blotting out the sun, a swarm of crying dragons. Wake up, the 3-eyed raven intoned. You must wake up. He'd heard that voice before. From the tree, hadn't he? And then a most pleasant coolness settled over him. It felt like someone had draped a blanket of coolest snow over his skin to soothe his boiling blood. His strength, already on the verge of recovering, rushed back in. He forced himself to focus, drawing on the natural energy in the air. Entering sage mode was second nature to him now, even more so while he lay still. His recovery accelerated tenfold and he found the strength to sit up. A boy lives. Golden eyes snapped open. Someone sat at his bedside. He squinted, blinking at her, trying to focus his blurry vision. It was the same faceless woman from before. No, he realized, not a woman but a girl, maybe a year or 2 older than him. His temper sparked. Back to try again, was she. She opened her mouth to speak but he didn't give her the chance. He surged upright, grabbed her by the throat with both hands and slammed her down, all but pinning her to the bed. She didn't resist in the least, When her hands rose, her left was empty, while her right held a small bottle. The now empty vial clattered out of her hand and struck the floor, shattering softly. A girl is unarmed, she gasped, face paling. A girl helped you. He could taste something in his mouth, faintly sweet. Had she forced him to drink whatever was in that vial? Why are you here? To help. She looked at him with her dark eyes. The poison was potent. Most would have perished in less than a day. You slept for a fortnight but did not die. So a girl gave you the antidote. Now a boy has recovered far sooner than he would have alone. His fingers slackened around her throat, but he still didn't let her up. Why? His brow furrowed as he sat up. I killed your friend. A boy killed no one. He scoffed. Pretty sure I killed someone. No, she shook her head, as much as his grip would allow. You killed no one. A man who discarded his name. That still doesn't explain why you helped me. She stared at him for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft, nearly reverent. Our God wears many faces. Yours is one of them. You are death made flesh. He reeled back, incredulous. You think I'm a god? A girl saw what a girl saw. She lowered her arms. And a girl saw much. Your eyes changed. You possess power that men do not. Blades shatter on your flesh and in your fists. You slew a man twice your size, crushed his head like a grape. Poison cannot kill you, only make you sleep. If that is not a god, then what is? Slowly, reluctantly he released her. And who are you? She stiffened where she lay. A girl has no name. A girl would be your sword, your shadow, your shield. He sensed nothing but honest from her. Honesty and fear, outright terror. Really, did she think he would hunt her down? Finish the job? No, better than that, with her alive, he'd have a witness. He needed that. More than that, he needed allies. The attack in the nursery had made things abundantly clear. He was strong in this second life, possessing nearly all of his abilities from the last, but he could be taken by surprise. Alone, he could only do so much. But with allies by his side, friends, weapons, he could always kill this one later. If you're going to serve me, you'll need a name. The girl stared up at him and said nothing. She made not a sound. Naruto knew that look. He blew out a sigh and let her sit up. You're going to make me pick out one, aren't you? The tiniest ghost of a smile traced her face as she did so. A girl would not mind. That accent, he could finally place it now. You're Westerosi, from the east. She nodded. A girl lived in Flea Bottom once, when she had a name. The hair on the back of his neck rose. There was something about the way she said those words. Am I looking at your real face right now? She shook her head. You are not. Show me. The faceless girl was silent for an agonizingly long moment. Then, slowly, she reached up to her face with both hands, hooking her fingers behind her ears. As he looked, she peeled it backward, parting it as one might carve an onion. It was a strangely fascinating, horrifying thing to watch. Her face came away, and her dark hair with it. Silver blonde tresses tumbled down her back and gray-violet eyes blinked back at him, set within a lean face marred by an ugly scar cutting leftwise across the length of her brow before curving down into the bridge of her nose. It was a miracle she hadn't lost an eye. Nevertheless, he knew what she was, if not who. He was looking at a Targaryen bastard. This one was a Blackfire. Not of pure blood, that much was infinitely clear, but someone who had the blood of the dragon in her veins all the same. He could tell by looking at her. Which once more begged the question, who are you? No one. Stubborn. Let's try again. Who are you? No one. She flinched a little this time. He didn't miss it. I'm going to ask you one more time. His voice dropped a growl. Lie to me again, and I'll finish what I started. Who are you? A girl does not know. She flung up her arms in a rare fit of pique, face twisting in distress. A girl never had one. Her hands flailed at him, slapping at his chest. He barely felt it. She was always called it or this, or bitch, or that. No names for her, never names. She never had one. Sympathy tugged at his hardened heart. Pit softened it. You don't even know your name. Another shake of her head. A girl tried to ask once. She was given this. She touched a finger to her face and the pink scar there. She did not ask again. Then he'd give her a name. One sprang to him out the darkness of his mind. Nymeria. How's that sound? Nymeria. The young Blackfire said the word slowly, rolling it over her tongue as though tasting it. A boy has a foul sense of humor. I'm a Lannister. A rusty chuckle stole out of him, despite his best efforts. What did you expect? A girl? She paused, swallowed, and took a moment to comport herself. No, except this name. She bowed her head, and quite suddenly there was a dagger in her hands. My blade is yours. Where she'd gotten it from, he knew not, only that she was now laying it in his lap. I will serve, from this day until my last. Valar Morghulis. Valar Dohaeris. He found himself muttering back out of habit, if nothing else. He knew what the words meant. The tiniest smile touched her scarred face. But you are more than a man. Fair. Do you know who hired you to kill me? A girl does not. Clearly she was going to struggle with that terminology a bit. A great amount of money was given. How much? Enough for two. She held up a pair of fingers, forming a versus shape with them. And so two were sent. You were to be a girl's test. Her face pinched in pain at the memory. A girl failed. A girl expected to die, but you showed mercy. Naruto grimaced. I didn't. He hadn't been thinking straight at the time, he'd just wanted her gone. Funny how a seemingly inconsequential choice like that came back not to bite him, but to aid him. A girl took your message back to the House of the Undying as demanded. The little Blackfire barreled on. A girl said we were foolish to attack you, among other things, and was cast out for her words. She is no longer welcome in the House of the Undying, or Bravos. Those bright eyes centered on him. It was her home for some time. Now it is no longer. And so a girl came here. No wonder she'd tied herself to him. The faceless men would be after her now, too. She wished to live. There was no duplicity in her voice, no negative intent he could sense. He found himself patting her head. Well, in that case. The door creaked open across the room. Cersei emerged, carrying a tray of food. He could see and smell a bowl of soup atop it. Naruto perked. She took one look at him and froze, going still as stone. She didn't even seem to see Nymeria sitting next to him. She only had eyes for him. The tray clattered to the floor, spilling broth everywhere as she covered her mouth. They answered my prayers. Naruto blinked, not quite comprehending. They who? His sister didn't answer, she just jumped him. 0.0.0.0. Tywin actually flinched when Cersei dragged him into his chambers. One had to know him to see it, to know what to look for, but it was there. His father's eyes didn't so much widen as they did bulge, the writing quill in his hand snapping clean in half as his right hand jerked to the side, coincidentally striking the inkwell which spilled and ruined whatever letter he'd been penning. You're awake. He shook his ink-spattered hand out, recovered quickly, but Naruto didn't miss the rattle in his voice. You've been asleep for some time. I gathered that. Where's Jaime? Cersei made a pained noise. Hunting with Uncle Kevin. Your mother is sleeping, Tywin continued before he could think to ask of her. I'll wake her shortly. How are you? Well, oddly enough, Nymeria's antidote, coupled with all the natural energy he'd drawn in, had done much to alleviate his aches and pains. Good. Straight to business then. The future of our family would be determined in coming months, if not years. Do you remember anything of your attackers? Naruto allowed himself a nod and said what he knew. Nymeria stiffened a little at his side. Do you understand why you were targeted? Tywin asked. I have a suspicion. There are precious few in this world who could command enough wealth to hire a faceless man, let alone two at once. Tywin must have given the matter some thought, because he didn't object at all when Cersei clung onto his arm. One would be the maesters of Aldtown. Another would be the magisters across the narrow sea. Lord Varys assures me that while they are terribly interested in you, they do not wish you dead. A blonde brow rose. And you trust him? Tywin made a rare noise of approval. I trust him to act in a certain capacity. The man loathes magic, but he would not act in such a feckless fashion toward one who hasn't threatened him. He is nothing if not honest in that regard. Think then who could command such wealth, who has a grudge against the Lannisters, who would stand to benefit from your death? He was being led to an answer. The king. But why? My friendship with Aerys, Tywin looked away with a grimace, if you can call it such, has been deteriorating for some time now. And speaking of dragons, he looked to Nymeria. I understand we have you to thank for my son's survival. Nymeria shrugged one shoulder. A boy would have awoken sooner or later. A girl merely expedited his recovery. You were one of the faceless. Was. She scowled. No longer. Cersei glowered at her. How easily you turn your coat. Naruto pinched her just above the ribs. Rather than retort, she bowed her head. Odd, that. Why was she behaving? You chose to back the winning side. Tywin's words drew him back to reality. I can respect that. He looked to him. And you trust her? He could feel Nymeria's gaze on him, pleading. It occurred to him that he could have her killed in this moment. She wouldn't be able to do anything about it. Decency won out. She didn't have to come back here. I'd still be in a bed if she hadn't. Fair, Tywin allowed. A former faceless girl might be useful. Nymeria bridled. I serve only one. Tywin took her defiance in stride. Aedis and I shall see you rewarded beyond your wildest dreams. But back to the matter of Jaime. Once more, Naruto found himself the object of that piercing stare. There is something you must be made aware of, boy. Much has happened while you were asleep. He couldn't help but gulp at that. Such as. Tywin didn't mince words. Your brother has rescinded his rights to Castle Rock. He wishes to join Aerys Kingsguard as soon as possible. Cersei gripped his arm tighter. Now Naruto understood the reason for her silence. Her grief. It felt like the floor fell out from under his feet. You can't be serious. I am. Tywin met his gaze evenly. You are now my heir. Tywin Lannister held no love for the gods. It was something of an unfortunate truth for the weary lord of Castle Rock. He held no faith in them. None. Why should he? If the so-called gods had their way, Nathaniel's head would be on a spike somewhere and Joanna would have died bringing Tyrion into the world. Tyrion, who had been born a dwarf. Tyrion, who shamed the family with his very existence. Tyrion, who had torn his own mother open from within merely by being born. Nathaniel had been on hand to prevent that, but the danger remained. No, the old lion chided himself as he read another letter, one of many. Don't focus on that. He despised the gods, not because of Tyrion, but because it seemed they would never stop trying to take Nathaniel. This was not the first time someone had sought to end his second son's life. There had been 3 prior to this, 3 Nathaniel didn't know of, that he would never know of if Tywin had anything to say about it. Pycelle had stopped one, the Hound, another. Joanna carved the last one a bright red smile from ear to ear and mounted their head outside the castle gates as a warning. That memory lifted Tywin's spirits somewhat. His wife was a lioness through and she had her claws. Woe betide any who sought to harm her cubs. Gods, he loved her. For a time, it seemed her warning was enough. The mysterious attempts had stopped and he'd thought no more of them. Until someone Aerys sent not 1, but 2 faceless men after his son. They'd failed. But poison had nearly succeeded where their blades faltered. That was the part that troubled Tywin. Poison. How very unlike Aerys. Was his former friend truly so foolish as to leave a trail? Or was he simply mad beyond reason, beyond caring even? The man he'd known had been eccentric, energetic, even a touch crazed at times, but stupid. No, never stupid. Duskendale may have eroded his sanity, but he must act as though the man still retained some semblance of his wits. To think otherwise was foolish indeed. A man must never underestimate their enemies, or a madman. Tywin took a moment to center himself, then coldly regarded the words written before him. The Starks of Winterfell would certainly be surprised, but that was precisely his aim. For if they were caught off guard, so too would the realm be. As planned. Aerys thought he finally had the measure of him, did he? The Rhines and the Tarbecks once thought so. Now the rains weep over their halls. With not a soul to hear. Tywin took a certain grim satisfaction sealing the letter with red wax red as blood and impressing his signet ring into the ink. From there he blew on the wax to cool it, and set in the box with the rest. He remained Hand of the King until he inevitably chose to discard the position, and in the meantime, he would use every scrap of that influence to his advantage. And if the dragon protested, he would know the lion still had claws. 6 ravens Jenna would soon have the twins well in hand. If all went according to plan, would fly today. He would see to it personally, the better to ensure the maesters did not intervene, nor the spider catch wind of his scheme in its infancy. They would eventually, of course. It was inevitable. But by then the seeds would take root. Let's see you predict this, old friend. He took a certain dark satisfaction in imagining the gawping face of Aerys, of the shouting and shrieking that would surely follow. By the time you do, it will be too late. It only took a matter of minutes to reach the Rookery Tower, even less to send the messages. The birds knew his face. Likewise, they were well trained and did not fuss as he attached the scrolls to their legs. Each knew where to go and went without complaint. Well, all save the one destined for Winterfell. He imagined that one looked a little surly at the thought of flying so far north. A bit of extra food, a pat on the head, accompanied by some brief words, and it was suitably encouraged to make the journey. From there Tywin returned to his chambers and summoned the mountain. His task was a simpler one. Gregor Clegane may be a mindless brute, but he was a mindless brute who could kill like no other. As of tomorrow, you and your brother will guard my heir with your lives. If he falls, so do you. Are we understood? The mountain nodded once, grunted, and left the way he'd come. Which brought Tywin to his third matter. The faceless men. It was good that the faceless girl turned her coat and sworn herself body and soul to his son. If she hadn't, she would be dead. It would not have been clean, but it would have sent a message. Yet in sparing her life, he gained more than a font of information on the faceless men, but also a wary sentinel, utterly devoted to Nathaniel's continued well-being. All because she thought he was a god. Tywin was content to perpetuate the farce so long as it kept her loyal. This, Nymeria, as Naruto had named her, did not know much of her order, but she knew enough of her faceless compatriots. For instance, their hands and feet. Their disguises allowed them to change their face, their voices, even the shape of their body at times, but that disguise only extended so far. An assassin masquerading as a cook would not have the scars of one, nor would a poisoner pretending to be a peasant have clean feet. One posing as an old woman would have wrinkled hands. Likewise, no amount of magic could mimic memories of the staff. He and Joanna knew the names and faces of every servant in the castle by heart, and they'd refused to take on any new ones since their attack. Any visitors who came were closely monitored at all times. He summoned 2 guards and gave them orders of their own. All were to be searched upon admittance to the rock. No weapons would be allowed in the presence of his family. They'd tightened their guard as best they could. The Lannisters would not be caught unawares again. Alas, that left the fourth and final matter of the evening, his children. This was not something he could simply fix with an order. Cersei had locked herself in her room. Last he'd heard, she was bawling her eyes out. Keevan had likely escorted Jaime to King's Landing by now, and Nathaniel. The boy would need time. In hindsight, Tywin knew he had stepped on more than a few toes in convincing Jaime to surrender his rights to Castle Rock. But they both knew it was better to have Nathaniel as heir. The boy was akin to a sponge, soaking up all he was taught, ever too eager to take in more. Where his brother and sister had ignored his wisdom and scoffed, Nathaniel learned those lessons and learned them well, proving himself a quick study. Having grown up as the spare, he knew he might never inherit, yet he'd thrown himself into learning all the same. Now there was much to do and little time in which to do it. Jaime understood the importance of family. Law and order was all well and good, but there were some laws that ran deeper. Stronger laws, older laws. Family came first. Family always came first. He knew what would happen when his son finally presented himself before Aerys and swore his vows. The Mad King's for mad he truly was paranoia would be pacified, thinking he'd snatched up Tywin's firstborn heir and humiliated him before all the lords and ladies of Westeros. The fool wouldn't realize he'd been duped until it was too late. Even a madman wouldn't dare take 2 sons from the same household. Such might well invite a rebellion. Maybe it was bloody well time for one. Aerys grew worse by the day. Afterwards, well, that was the future. It would take much to see Jaime released from that cloak. But released he would be, when the time was right, and he would be free to do as he wished afterward. Tywin knew he was skirting between loyalty and treason. Some of these plans might well take years to reach fruition. But neither gods nor man would compel him to give another child to Aerys. To prevent that, he needed allies, a great many of them, and soon. Someone knocked on his door. Here came one now. Enter. 0.0.0.0. He was dreaming yet again. Naruto was so terribly died of dreams. He'd seen enough for a lifetime. Yet they just would not let him be. This time he couldn't even make sense of them. A scattering of flashing images of sights and sounds, and those he did see made little sense. He glimpsed a kraken rising from the deep to strange arose. A wounded lion limped through a forest, missing one paw, a young viper hiding in its mane. Bother were hounded by a skinless man. Wolves howled over the corpse of a stag. Towers tumbled. A mad dragon laughed, only for another dragon to bite his neck. Trout boiled in their rivers as falcons fell from the sky. A tide of ice came from the north and this time there was no one to stop it, only cold blue eyes staring at him out of the dark. A voice like knives hissed at him. I see you. This wasn't a dream, was it? Dreams didn't bring this kind of cold calm. Whatever it was, it couldn't hurt him. He lifted his chin to glare at it in return. I see you, too. That seemed to surprise it. Whatever the blazes in was You are not afraid. Bitter laughter tumbled past his lips. I've seen worse than you. It made a noise, might have been laughter. You have not. He had, so much worse. Was a dream or a vision, supposed to scare him? I have. He forced heat into his voice. And there was light. It burst from his body for an instant, only a moment. It was enough. He saw them. The source of the blue eyes. So many dead. They surrounded him, all staring at him with lifeless orbs. They didn't flinch in the face of his fire, didn't even blink. They just stared, as the fire faded back to black. The voice came on again. You are weaker now, lesser. The fox is not with you. It stung more than he cared to admit. And, he tilted his head, just because I'm weaker doesn't make you stronger, now, does it? I'll find him, just you wait and see. Arrogance radiated from the Darness. But why wait? You want me. He spread his arms. Here I am. Wind gathered in his palms, rising to a keening pitch as he clenched his fingers. Come get me. Could he die in a vision? Naruto hoped not. Oddly, his words seemed to give the blue-eyed entity pause. We shall sleep, for now. Soon, we will rise. You cannot stop us. Without warning the world fell away and he found himself gazing up a man in a tree. Why in the seven hells was he looking at some madman trapped in a tree? Would this never end? All around him a cage of roots loomed in very direction, barely visible in the dark, forming a strange chamber of earth and stone. You are dreaming. The man looked at him and spoke, his voice a low, raspy whisper from years of silence. Wait, how did he know that? But you are not Brandon Stark. You are not meant to be here. He blinked. You can see me. I can, son of fire. As can he. Your presence has changed things. A trembling finger rose to jab at his chest as the strange tree man prattled on. Slowed some events, accelerated others, obliterated yet more. There is much to do and little time in which to do it. Now wait just a second. The man in the tree most assuredly did not. The name Lannister is not enough. You must gather allies. Shout at the man with the burned face, but be gentle with she who is faceless. Find the fox. Burn the madness out the realm and hold it together. Prepare. For what? For darkness. For death. For the Night King. Shadows swarmed in. He woke with a start, trying to remember where he was. Warm blankets, a familiar ceiling, the faint taste of nightshade on his tongue. He rolled over, palmed his face and shook his head. A great weight settled over his chest and he recalled why he'd had a drop of that tonic last night. He wished he hadn't. Because you see, he remembered. You are now my heir. Isn't it remarkable, how 5 words, 5 little words, can utterly upend your life? Turn reality on its ear with but a gesture. Tear away all that sweet surety and certainty you've clung to. Yank the rug out from under you, trip you up, then toss itself on your head. That summed up Naruto's current predicament quite nicely. For so long he'd thought he knew his place in this world. He hadn't been entirely happy with it, sure, but he was content. Not quite happy, but content. He had a wonderful loving mother who loved him to death, a ruthless father who would destroy any and all enemies who dared threaten the family, 2 beloved siblings, 3 now, including little Tyrion, an aunt, and 3 uncles besides. He couldn't ask for more. Life was stable, life was simple, life made sense. Until it didn't. At all. Castle Rock was suddenly his to inherit and with it, the world his oyster. Soon he would be free to pick and choose whichever wife he wanted to woo, having as many children, grandchildren, and even great-grandchildren as he liked. Even his bastards, assuming he made enough missteps to actually have any, would be well provided for. That was precisely the problem. He felt dirty enough thinking about taking Jaime's place on a good day, now that his brother had apparently given it up without so much as a fuss. He felt downright filthy. How was he to feel about all this? Happy, hollow, both, neither. Tywin must have wanted this for a long time. He wasn't entirely sure when his lord father decided he would be better suited to the role, but he had, and here they were. No way out but through. But which way was through? And now these strange dreams. How he longed for the days when things made sense. Right, no point sulking about it. He spent a moment sitting on his bed, staring into space, trying to make sense of it all. Staring into space wasn't going to get him dressed. Someone had left a change of clothes for him at the foot of the bed, a red gold tunic and long black trousers. Naruto threw them on haphazardly at first, realized how that would look as well as the gossip it would cause among the servants, then took time to dress himself properly. From there he paced to his mirror. The face that stared back at him looked wearier than words. "You're in the great game now, beloved nephew," Uncle Garyon had told him. "And the great game is terrifying." It certainly was, if only because he didn't know what in the seven hells was going on anymore, or how he was going to adjust. What had changed while he was recovering? Why was Cersei suddenly on her best behavior? Why had Jaime ridden to King's Landing to join the Kingsguard? Why was he having these visions? Riddles within riddles, plots within plots. He'd get to the bottom of them sooner or later, it was just a matter of time, but he'd never really had the patience for this sort of thing. To that end, Nymeria hadn't left his side. The faceless girl lurked nearby even now, watching over him with endless patience. If she was hiding under the bed, he was going to have a good long laugh. As though reading his mind, something shifted under the bed. Naruto blinked. "You must be joking." Someone tapped on his door. Naruto straightened up, mustered his best Lannister expression and sighed once. "Come." Grand Maester Pycelle, still on loan from King's Landing, shuffled in like the dusty old codger he pretended to be. "My apologies, my lord," the aging Maester rasped, "for interrupting your time of leisure. I wanted to discuss a few matters with you, in light of your recovery." He reached a trembling hand into his pouch and withdrew a pair of letters. One was larger than the other. "I have here a letter from Elia Martell. She wished you to read it should you wake." He strode forward to take them and paced back to his bed. Elia, he'd almost forgotten about her in the chaos. But the larger letter. And another, Pycelle groaned behind him, from a most auspicious personage. Naruto glimpsed the three-headed dragon stamped into the wax. His breath hitched in his throat and he found himself inhaling reflexively. The Queen. His fingers itched and he to read it. But he didn't dare. He absolutely did not dare. Not with Pycelle in his presence. His fingers ran over the scroll a moment longer, checking it for any breaks. Still sealed. Good. Idly, he looked back to Pycelle, still lingering near the door. Very well, he needed to have words with the man in any case. Now seemed as good a time as any. Turning his back on Pycelle, he walked away and traced one hand over his desk. "I understand you nearly let me die some days ago." Pycelle's face turned a fascinating shade of puce. "My lord, I would never. I kept you alive. And in pain," he continued, plucking a piece of fruit, an apple. He bit into it heartily. Swallowed. "Now, what was it you said? I should have died." Pycelle flinched. "That is not what I meant. You must understand." "Oh, I do." He bobbed his head, savoring the brief gleam of relief in the older man's eyes, right before he snuffed it out. "And you must understand that I'm well within my rights to have you thrown into a cell. Perhaps a stay in the dark will loosen your tongue." The poor man went white as a mouse. My lord, that is, you cannot." Still he persisted with this farce. His temper sparked. "Enough." Pycelle paused. "Lord Nathaniel. I can't be the only one to see through this performance." He channeled Tyne as best he could and glared at him, hot enough to melt Valyrian steel. "How is it possible that so many could be so stupid for so long?" Pycelle continued to stare at him. It roused his temper further. "You're old, not mute," he snapped. "Speak, or would you rather go the way of ill and pain?" Pycelle was silent for a moment more, then he smiled the smile not of some doddering old mouse, but a wily rat, clever and sly, and abandoned his hunch. When next he spoke, his voice held a strength that it had lacked only moments before. "There are times when I have trouble believing it myself." Naruto sat on the bed. "Then why the farce? You truly are your father's son." The old Maester chuckled at that. It was a surprisingly deep sound now that he wasn't putting on airs. "It took even him some time to recognize my deception. I hadn't thought you would see through me so easily." His frown deepened. "You still haven't answered my question, Pycelle." "I shall, with but a word. Flowers." He blinked. "I don't follow." "You will." The utter surety of his words unnerved him yet further. "So many flowers, my lord. Each wanting to grow the tallest, bloom the brightest." He scoffed as though at some dark joke only he understood. "Then one by one, sooner or later, they all get plucked." "No," he shook his head, "I don't want to be the tallest or the brightest. I only want to remain in the garden, until my time comes to return to the dirt." Ah, so he wanted to survive, then. Good, he could use that. A man could be compelled to do all manner of things in the name of survival. "Thanks for the poetic candor. But I still fail to see why I should trust you. I have served the interests of the House Lannister." The Maester lifted his chin to stare him down, but he didn't miss the tiny hint of fear lurking behind that confident demeanor. "Unfailingly, for generations. Your father has built the strongest house, and it is that house I wish to serve. Twion had built a strong house indeed. It didn't change his questions. And what happens when we are no longer the strongest house? You say such. Pycelle granted him a wry smile. And yet I do not think such a day will come while I still draw breath, my lord. Naruto took another bite of his apple and waved him on. You represent the dawn of a new age. Pycelle rubbed his hands together, openly simpering while he watched him eat. A new era. Your father sees it, your mother sees it, even your siblings have begun to suspect. But I saw it from the first. The moment you manifested your talents. To that end, I have endeavored to protect you, from the moment you were born. Shortly after you came into this world, he paused, weighed his words for a moment, then barreled on. I was approached by a man. He offered me an absurd amount of gold to kill you. The very next day, he found himself in a cell. And what proof do you have? None. The aging maester shrugged. Everything I have told you, your father already knows. By all means, ask him. That said, he sensed the other shoe about to drop. I wish to apologize for my earlier conduct. He continued. You were the second son. I could not be seen to favor you overmuch. Even now, as Lord Tywin's heir, there is a limit to the aid I can be seen granting you. Varys has spied everywhere. It is a delicate balance I walk. Naruto had an inkling. He chose to ask regardless. And why is that? Many a maester in Aldtown wishes to be rid of you. Some see you as an abomination. A mage. But not I. He shook his head. I am loyal to House Lannister. I will always be loyal. Unlike that faceless girl of yours. Naruto couldn't even bring himself to be angry at that remark. Pycelle didn't understand. How could he? There was no one more loyal to the cause than Nymeria. One day he would understand. And if not, if he sought to inconvenience or otherwise diminish her in his eyes. Well, masters were old. They had accidents all the time. That will be all, Grand Maester. He waved Pycelle off. You may leave. Actually, wait. He paused as a thought occurred to him. Aerys wanted to make his life miserable with poisons, did he? Two could play at that game, not with death, but something far more terrifying. There is one thing you can do for me. He knelt before him. Command me. Bring me every book you have on grayscale. Where to find it, how it can be contracted. Everything. Let's see how Aerys likes being tormented. I've got some nasty pranks in mind for that lunatic. Pycelle looked like he wanted to question, but chose not to. It will be done. He rose and walked backward through the door, pausing only to close it behind him. Naruto counted to 3. 3 more. 9, now. Then he looked to his bed. Well. Nymeria slid out from under it with fluid ease. He'd suspected she was hiding under there, but it amazed him to see just how quickly she moved. He speaks truth. Blast. He'd sensed as much, but if Pycelle was lying it would have been far easier to have him executed. No matter. Rats had their uses and so did he, for now. Nymeria turned a questing look to the letters, half forgotten on his desk. He saw the unspoken question in her gaze. Might as well read them, then. Naruto broke the seal on Elia's note first. Her handwriting was surprisingly messy. He found it surprisingly endearing. Dear Lion. You are still sleeping as I write this, and by the time you read it, I will no doubt have returned to Dorne. Allow me to be frank. What are you? When you held my hand and touched that tree, I saw things. I'm still trying to make sense of them. I find myself more curious about the faceless man. Or rather, his body. The head, it was crushed. Like a grape. I would have suspected the mountain, but he was not in the castle at the time and your sister swears you were the one to do the deed. Who attacked you? What did they seek? Your brother. No one will tell us anything and I find it all so wretchedly dull. But not you. I suspect you will have much to say when you wake. And you will wake, of that, I have no doubt. I shall tell mother of you. No doubt she will find you as intriguing as I have. Lion of Lannister. I would have us continue our discourse. Oh, and a baron still demands that duel. Sincerely, Elia. She is courting you. What? Naruto looked to Nymeria. No, she isn't. The Blackfire gave him a long-suffering look. She is. A girl knows. He gave her a decidedly flat look. And how does a girl know these things, Nymeria shrugged. A girl knows many things. A girl listens. A girl learns. Will you read the Dragon Queen's letter next? How do you know about that? Nymeria quirked a pale brow even as he spoke. Never mind. He shook his head as he reached for the next letter. Was Elia flirting? If so, Clever girl, he muttered. Very clever girl. He unfurled Rayella's letter. Definitely larger. How a raven managed to carry this, he had no idea. Must be one sturdy bird. By contrast, her writing was dignified, elegant, but he could tell it had been written in haste. No, wait, there were 2 letters here, a smaller one tucked within the larger. Had she written another message? He read the first. Dearest stranger. I confess myself curious. There are so many things I wish to ask you. Who are you? Why do you wish to help me? How have you escaped the king's notice for so long? As I said, so many questions. Yet none of them seems important as this. How would you help me? Your last raven said you would, yet I cannot fathom how. Would you kill a king for me, Esser? Would you storm the Red Keep and put Eris to the sword? I do not doubt your words, nor your intent, but I cannot see how you mean to make good on them without plunging the realm into war. I want to know who you are. So very badly, but I suppose ignorance is bliss. At the very least, could you tell me who you are not? Regards, the Queen. The second proved far larger, and more troubling than the first. Dearest Lannister. So you are a lion, after all. The irony isn't lost on me. I should have known. Only one of Tywin's blood would dare stand up to Aerys. And here you are, baring your fangs at him. Worry not, I discovered your house name by purest chance. I had thought you might be the newest member of my husband's Kingsguard, young Esser Jaime Lannister. His sudden arrival was suspicious, but when I hinted at our correspondence, he only smiled at me and said, "Not this lion, your grace." He would not tell me any more than that, the smug prick. But you are a Lannister. Do not deny it. Which Lannister, I know not, but you are a lion nonetheless. I shall say this now. This is a trick, some means to break me down even more than I already am. I beg you to cease. If it is not, then my heart is yours. I wish that we could meet, that I might see you and speak face to face. Yet you must be careful. Aerys would tear down Castle Rock if he knew of this. What do you look like, I wonder? Are you short, tall? I find myself wondering. It keeps me up at night. My so-called husband worsens by the day. Aerys sees traitors in every shadow and makes enemies of allies. He burns someone almost every week, and afterwards, no. I do not wish to speak of what occurs afterward. My own Kingsguard cannot protect me, though Esser Jaime has tried as best he can. One of the older knights made the mistake of arguing with the king just yesterday. Aerys had him burned before the court for all to see. He called it treachery. I call it the death of a god-man. All the while, no one stopped him. Not Esser Athery Dane, not Esser Barristan, no one. This madness cannot go on much longer. Should he find these letters, I expect fire shall seem a lover's caress. I would ask that you burn this as well once you have read it. I hope to hear from you soon, my lion. Tentative regards. Tilda, your queen. Nymeria made a noise that might have been a distant cousin to whistle. My lion, she says. She turned a wry smile on him. A boy has done his work well. Naruto groaned. Not another word. And she calls herself your queen. The faceless girl cooed, sitting beside him on the bed. How adorable. There'll be no more discussion on the matter. Utterly red-faced, he could only elbow her as he stalked his way to the blazing hearth. A flick of his wrist cast Rayella's letters into the flames. He watched it smolder away completely. It gave him time to banish the flush from his cheeks and recover his wits. Did you find the hound? Nymeria tilted her head, idly making him think of a cat he'd once seen. The one with the scarred face, yes. That's the one, and he's been burnt, not scarred. Her brow furrowed. What is the difference? He gained those awful wounds in battle, no. No, he mimicked her voice. A girl knows much but she does not know all. Then how did acquired such horrid injuries? Ask his brother, Gregor. Why? He told her the tale soon thereafter. By the time he'd finished her expression had grown dark indeed. Say the word and I will slay him. Tempting but no. Naruto shook his head. Not quite yet. Where did you find him? In his room, looking after his sister. A girl does not like this Gregor Clegane. Stay away from him, you hear? He wagged a finger her way. If he gets his hands on you I'll have to kill him. Gregor was a dangerous bastard and twice as mean. He did things, foul things, dark deeds he couldn't prove, because there was never any proof, but twisted all the same. That one hadn't been born quite right in the head. His sister only lived because he'd kept a watchful eye on her. But he was good at killing, so Tywin kept him. For now, that would change soon. But first, Sandor. That was a matter he'd been meaning to rectify for some time now. No time like the present. He was just climbing to his feet when the door opened again. My sweet boy. Nymeria tried to dive back under the bed. Too little, too late, for her. Naruto had all of instant to brace, then Joanna was on him in a swirl of silk, pulling him into her bosom. Tywin must have told her he was awake. She certainly acted like it, because she herself down onto the bed and hauled him onto her knee. Heat speared through his face. He was too old for that. Moon, he whined a little. I'm fine, really, I am. Don't you, mother, me, young man. She gave him a good hard shake. I was worried sick. And who is this Blackfire girl Tywin's told me about? Nymeria sneezed and Joanna's gaze snapped to her. She would have given Kushina herself a run for her money. Ah, there she is. Come here, child. Nymeria cast a pleading glance his way. Naruto shook his head. Nope, not getting between that. You attacked my son. A nod. And then you saved his life. Another nod, smaller this time. A girl did. Good, should you betray him, I will know. Now then. Her arm snaked out, grabbing Nymeria and reeling her in. In an instant, she had the poor girl planted in her lap opposite him. Tell me about yourself. Nymeria squeaked out a protest, to no avail. This was one battle even a faceless girl couldn't run from. 0.0.0.0. Someone was knocking on her door again. Cersei buried her face into her pillow. Couldn't they take a bloody hint? She wanted to be alone. 0.0.0.0. A scarlet-slitted eye opened in the dark. It was too damn cramped in here. When would he see the sun? 0.0.0.0. The hound wasn't hard to find. Tywin had kept him and his brother close, simple enough. What followed afterwards was decidedly not simple. Nay, not at all. 0.0.0.0. Sandor knew there was trouble when the door opened. If it were him alone he wouldn't have bothered, but he was busy sharpening his sword. His little sister wasn't. Selene was closer and practically flung it open. She always did like visitors in the keep. Part of the reason she always kept their hearth burning and well stocked with firewood. My lord, we weren't expecting you. Quit the visitor indeed. He hadn't expected Nathaniel fucking Lannister to drop in. Sandor lowered his sword and watched them. Selene was a darling girl of 10 with dark hair, brown eyes and a sharp wit to match. Clever girl, and sharp as a tack this one. His one weakness, he didn't like leaving her alone, so he kept her with him wherever he went these days, away from Gregor, away from those dark eyes and grasping hands. But damn if she didn't make him weak. Don't worry, this won't take long. He cast a quick glance about. As Gregor around. Both of them stiffened. Selene's smile grew strained. No. Oddly enough, that seemed to please him. Good. Would you mind kneeling for a second, Clegane? Fuck kneeling. The hound spat at his feet. You ain't a king, little lord. And you're too damn tall, ya big bastard. He wasn't prepared for the explosion of expletives that burst forth from Nathaniel Lannister, so much so that he reeled back on one foot. I can't heal your bloody face with you towering over me like that. Now do you want me to fix what your brother did to ya or not? Clegane looked past him. His baby sister tapped her foot impatiently. Just let him do it already. You'll feel much better. Selene really was his one weakness. He thanked the gods every day for her survival. Oh, for crying out loud, hurry up and kneel already, big brother. Sandor Clegane never knelt so fast in his bloody life. Nathaniel laid a hand on his scarred face. It didn't hurt. If anything it itched like bitch, 1,000 ants crawling across the right side of his face. He grit his teeth against it, hating every moment, trying not to skirm. Bloody mage. Swords he understood, women he understood, but magic. He'd never understand magic, because you couldn't fight magic, not the usual way at least. The idea of something he couldn't fight made him feel weak, small. And then, quite suddenly, the itching sensation stopped. Here, the little lordling handed him a mirror. Look. Sando seized it with trembling fingers. And he saw, his face looked normal. A little pink on the right side, but that was just fresh skin. No scars, no ruined face. He quivered as he hadn't since he was a boy. He felt Selene dart forward and give him a big hug, on he absently returned with one arm, but he only had eyes for the grinning blonde before him. How? He rasped. Why? Nathaniel titled his head. Do you need to know? No, he bloody well didn't. He wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth. That said, I'd avoid your brother for a few days if I were you. He might not like this. A harsh bang caused them to jump. Sandor looked back. Something stood in the doorway. Something, not someone, never someone. Sandor hadn't considered his brother human for a long while. Because make no mistake, it was the mountain standing in the doorway, clad in full armor. There was blood on it, of course. Always was. He didn't miss the wineskin in his hand, nor his flushed face. Seemed someone had been drinking. Shame. Gregor was mean enough when he was sober. Put a little wine in him and he got worse. Clegane. Nathaniel grunted. Celine gulped enviously. Brother. Gregor looked toward him, blinked, saw his healed face, frowned. Now. Sandor tensed. He wouldn't put it past the bloody monster to try and burn him again. The little lord must have realized it as well, because he sighed. Go ahead, try. He turned a limpid smile on him. See what happens. Sure enough, the mountain took the bait. He didn't say a word. Not one. He stepped forward, threw the wine sin away and reached for Sandor. The younger Clegane tensed. Thunk. Sandor didn't see the prince move, but he certainly heard the punch that folded his brother in half. It shook the damn keep. His greatsword went flying across the floor. Celine yelped and ducked away behind him. Sandor shielded her with one arm, for all the good it did him. Here, now, in this moment, Gregor wasn't focused on them. See, that's the funny thing about giants. An eerily calm voice cooed, words spoken so soft that it took Sando several seconds to realize who'd done the deed. By the time he did, it was far too late. The big guy always underestimates the little guy. Tywin's boy grabbed his brother by the face and smashed a knee into his groin. Sandor heard something burst. The mountain crumbled to his knees with a dull wheeze. Another kick from Nathaniel kept him there. A third drew a mewling whine from the monster. I'm betting everyone looks little to you these days, Sir Gregor. Credit where it was due, his brother was in a right rage. He lunged at him, grabbing for his head. Nathaniel opened his mouth and bit his little finger clean off at the lowest joint. The mountain reared back with a yowl of pain, clutching his bloody hand. Not satisfied with such an injury, the little lord spat his prize out and stalked forward. A tan hand closed around Gregor's still screaming face and smashed it into the floor. Once, twice, thrice. After the third, those fingers clenched around his ugly visage. He didn't pop his head, though Sandor almost wished he had. Instead he marched to the fireplace, dragging the stunned Gregor behind him. Oh. Sandor clamped a hand over Celine's face and made her cover her ears. He didn't want her to see this. Because he did. Just as well too, because Nathaniel pressed Gregor's face to the flames like a nice juicy mutton chop. You've grown so used to smashing through all your enemies that you forgot something terribly important. Nathaniel hummed over the screams, over his thrashing, over the awful smell of sizzling flesh. There's always a bigger fish out there. Always. Without warning he spun and threw the burned man out the fire, strode over to where his greatsword lay, and gave it a great big kick. It skittered his way with a harsh clatter. The intent was clear. What are you waiting for? He gave it another nudge with his boot. Pick it up. The mountain quivered, clutching at his ruined face. Pick it up. Sandor wondered if he would, wondered if this was moment the mountain finally crumbled. He held his breath, even as Celine clutched at him. And then, Sir Gregor Clegane, most terrifying man in Westeros, trembled. When he tried to rise, Nathaniel kicked out his left knee. The result was humorous as it was horrible. With his knee mangled, Tywin's greatest knight began babbling. Nathaniel showed no mercy. He reared back for another blow. That tore it. Gregor broke and crawled out of the room like a drunken crab. Sandor had never seen his brother move so fast, flee so far from, well, anything. The ghost of a grin touched the corner of his mouth. It grew with each passing moment that Gregor didn't return. Poor Gregor Clegane. Best by a boy, his brother's reputations would never recover from this. He'd always wanted to kill his brother, from the moment he shoved his face in the fire. But this spectacle, this abject humiliation, here and now. Sandor Clegane absolutely howled with laughter. In that instant, the little lord won his loyalty. For life. You maimed the mountain. Nathaniel didn't flinch, bless him. I did. What of it? Standing before his desk once more, Tywin's heir met him stare for stare and refused to budge an inch. It almost made him smile, like looking back through time to the boy he'd once been. Would that the rest of his children had such steel in their spine. Tyrion was just a babe, He'd all but given up hope on Cersei for now, while Jaime had only just begun to find his, but Nathaniel. The Mad King himself could have stood in this very room, and he doubted that stoic expression would waver. With an iron will like that, the legacy of the Lannisters would be in good hands. And so rather than reprimand him, Tywin asked a question. Why? Simple. The boy planted a hand on his desk. The loyalty of Sandor outweighs the cruelty of Gregor. Better a determined dog than a mad mountain. Tywin considered the matter a moment. It was true, Gregor had grown increasingly erratic as of late. Unpredictable, violent, even. He'd killed a guard just the other day for looking at him. The man was a blunt instrument at the best of times, crude but effective, good for breaking and bludgeoning the enemies of the Lannisters and little more. Few could hope to stand against a man of that height and strength. In light of that, he'd turned a blind eye to the Mons' eccentricities for some time now. But did you have to burn him? I did. The faintest curl of Nathaniel's upper lip told him exactly what he needed to know. Violence is the only language Gregor understands. He was born mean. There's something wrong with him. Up here, he tapped a finger to his skull. But he knows strength, and I proved mine to him. He hasn't come near Sandor or Selene since I put him in his place. Because no one ever had. Tywin imagined Esser Gregor was at something of a loss now. Still, the idea that he might otherwise be addled. He leaned back in his chair, contemplating the matter further. You might send a message to the maesters, then. Already have. The boy beat him to it. They call it a tumor. A sickness of the brain. Can you cure it? Maybe. A shrug followed. I might be able to. Not sure I should. If he's as much a monster with it as he is without, what's the point? Tywin tutted softly. His boy was clever, but he still didn't see all the angles. Not yet. He would in time. With aging came experience, and he was growing slowly but surely. If you could secure his loyalty, he would be a powerful ally. Nathaniel clicked his tongue. Maybe, but do I really want someone like that on my side? There it was, that good heart of his again. Tywin oft favored the iron fist, but the boy was akin to a velvet glove draped over it. He was the kind face of Lannisters, offering the carrot before the stick. His mercy played well into his plans for the family, but there were times when he thought the boy could stand to be more ruthless. The only good enemy was a dead enemy, as the saying went. Were that true, he would have killed Aerys long ago, consequences be damned. Still, if his son practiced peace, he would never be wise in war. How little he knew. Which brings us to another matter. He steepled his fingers. Lord Rickard Stark has agreed to my offer. Nathaniel caught on quickly. Sharp as a tack, this one. You're fostering me in the north. For a time, 5 or 6 years, perhaps. Your sister will go to the Stormlands. Sure enough, the boy's expression proved quite telling. Tywin pursed his lips. You do not approve. His son most surely did not. I have questions. Good. He would have thought less of him had he gone off meekly to suffer in the cold without protest. Ask. Why the north? It is the last place Aerys would expect to find you. Also the furthest from his reach. And the Northmen at least, care not for the Targaryens. They ascribe to their foolish notions of honor. The Martells seek an alliance with the crown, the Tyrells are loyal to the crown, the Baratheons share blood with the crown. Nathaniel quirked a brow. When you say it like that, it sounds as if everyone is licking the Mad King's boots. Not all. The Arryns hide away in their mountains. The Tullys obsess over petty squabbles, while the Freys are ever eager to ingratiate themselves with the Mad King. The Greyjoys are far worse, would happily reap and reave while the lot of us are distracted. Nathaniel thumbed his chin and considered the matter further. Then why send Cersei to the Stormlands? That's the same as giving them a hostage against us, isn't it? Tywin scoffed. Let them think they have a prize in your sister. They do not. He left the rest unspoken. Nathaniel and perhaps Jaime once he accomplished his great task were the hope for his house. It was too soon to trust Tyrion, no matter what Joanna might wish of him. Learning to love his third son might well prove an exercise in futility. It was simply too soon to tell. Not for the first time, Tywin found himself inordinately glad he'd made Nathaniel his heir. He wasn't spitefully stupid, but in the same vein he wasn't afraid to ask questions. An admirable quality in a leader. And if his plan paid off, years from now, he might even be, no, best not to get his hopes up, lest he place all his eggs in one basket. You may take that girl of yours with you. And Clegane, of course. Nathaniel fixed him with a keen look. Which one? Whichever you prefer. Cersei won't like that. Then perhaps you should speak to her before you leave. Point 0.0.0. Cersei hadn't been eating. Naruto knew it at a glance. One look was all it took. The moment he picked the door's lock and saw her pale face, it was easy to see. She didn't look up from her pillow as he entered, not even when he set a tray of food down beside her bed. She looked thinner, gaunt, even. He tapped her shoulder and she rolled over, refusing to look at him. Still sulking over Jamie, of course. His departure had hurt her dearly. Eat. He tapped her again. She didn't move. You need to eat. No response. Eat. He hefted a loaf of bread at his sister like a sword, or I swear to the sage I'll shove this down your bloody throat. That got a reaction out of Cersei. She rolled over to scowl at him. What in the seven hells is a sage MMPH? He shoved the bread into her mouth, muffling her words. If you can sass me, you can eat. Cersei glared at him. Naruto hefted another loaf with intent. In the end, she was the first to back down. She chewed reluctantly, swallowed, and looked at him through half-lidded eyes. Where is Jamie? Was she that much of a mess? You where he is. He's joined the Kingsguard. He ignored her flinch. Now came the difficult part. And you're going to be sent to the Stormlands for a bit. Her brow furrowed. You're coming with me. No. He shook his head and braced himself for the inevitable explosion that was sure to follow his words. I'm going to Winterfell. What? She drew back, startled. No, this must be some sort of mistake. Father would never separate us like this. He would and he has. There's nothing I can do about it. But I don't want to go to Storm's End. She looked away, sullen. It's not fair. Wasn't she supposed to be the older sibling here? Why did this always fall to him? Father doesn't hate us. He took her by the arm and steered her back to him. He's trying to protect us and build bonds with the other houses. It'll only be for a few years. How many? 5 or 6, maybe less. Cersei absolutely hissed at him. That doesn't mean he can sell us off like a pack of. She paused, paled suddenly, and swallowed a caustic retort. Never mind. There it was again, that pause, the moment she took to compose herself. She'd stopped herself from saying something nasty again, from being an utter shrew. Why are you acting like this? Like what? Cersei averted her eyes and looked away from him, idly twirling a lock of blonde hair around one finger. I don't know what you mean. Like that, he snapped his fingers at her. Not yourself. She took a deep breath, perhaps in anger, or maybe to steady herself. He never knew. And then, I prayed for you. Now it was his turn to blink. Pardon. While you were dying, she elaborated, patting his hand. You were asleep for so long after the attack. No one thought you woke up, and Pycelle, that old white rat, couldn't wake you. So I prayed. Her fingers squeezed his, so tight it was almost painful. I prayed and prayed and prayed. I swore to all the old gods and knew that I'd be a better person if they let you live. And you did. They brought you back to me. So I have to keep my promise. I have to, or they'll take you away again. I always would have come back, you know. Naruto nearly said the words aloud, but he bit his tongue at the last second. If this made her a better person, then surely that was a good thing. You'll be safe, won't you, little brother? She drew him into her arms, and for once, he didn't protest against her embrace. You'll come back to me again. Her hand stroked the top of his head gently as she whispered sweet nothings to him. Won't you? You won't let those barbarians break you. Strange turn of phrase there. He chose to ignore it. That was a mistake. I'll try. It was the only thing he could think to say. Don't make yourself miserable in the Stormlands. Who knows? You might enjoy it. Cersei huffed and held him tighter. I most certainly will not, but I shall try. He tried to stand up. She didn't let him go. A sigh parted his lips. Fine. He'd let her be clingy. Just this once. The things we do for love. 0.0.0. He had time enough to write 2 quick letters before dawn. Sending ravens up in the north would be difficult, he knew that, hence his frantic scribbling now. One for Elia, another for Rhaella. The former wasn't much to read, but the latter. Well, some might call this treason. It was a risk, of course. If anyone intercepted the ravens he might be in a spot of trouble. But no one would. He'd seen to that. These messages would combust if anyone but their intended recipients opened them. From a purely political perspective he could see why such subterfuge caused strife, but everything really would be better if the Mad King was gone. Loyalty to the crown and the realm was all well and good, but there came a point when sanity outweighed it. What was the saying? Every time a Targaryen was born the gods flipped a coin. Half of them went mad, didn't they? Be it in the beginning or the end. Which meant treason, they said. Treason it was, then. Even dragons died. But before death came torment. And he had just the thing for Aerys. 0.0.0.0. The north wasn't as cold as Naruto feared. Some might call that cold comfort. Hey, Jamie would have smacked him for a joke like that. Mother would have laughed. She'd cried when he left. He wondered how she was faring now. Almost all of her children sent away for their own safety, leaving her to raise Tyrion nearly alone. No, don't think about that. Happy thoughts. Warm thoughts. This far wasn't warm like the Westerlands, but it was hardly the icy hell he'd heard stories of. He'd take what he could get in a world like this. The Hound wasn't happy about it. Even with his healed face, he'd been scowling all the way. Nymeria was shivering, too. He'd lent her his cloak long ago, but she clearly wasn't used to these temperatures. The faceless girl made no complaint, but he saw her scowl all the same. Winterfell certainly lived up to its namesake if nothing else. Even in summer there was snow about in the castle yard, and the air, while not freezing, had a crisp chill to it. The castle proper was magnificent. From here one could hold off even the staunchest of sieges. It came quite close to matching the majesty of Castle Rock. No sign of the lord and his family, however. No one had expected them, or even come to greet them. Some might have called that breach of courtesy. Rude, even. Naruto called it secrecy. It was only natural that Tywin would want to keep this secret, and he couldn't much blame him for that. Best to keep some things under wraps. If the whole realm knew he was here, he'd never be safe. Faceless men did not come cheap, and while he very much doubted they'd come for him again after the ultimatum he'd issued, he wouldn't put it past dumb thugs or common cutthroats to try their luck. Likely only the Starks knew he was here, but where in blazes were? Aha! Movement. He heard the harsh canter of hooves behind them, such a noise that nearly had his escort performing an about-face. A rider in light leathers came barreling into the courtyard behind them, astride a black stallion. He shot past them, circled once, and came to a halt. No, he realized as they tugged back their hood, not a boy. He found himself staring at a slender, dark-haired girl nearly of an age with him. You're the Lannister lad, then. I am. He quirked a blonde brow at her. Who are you? She swung herself off the horse with a grin and offered him her hand. Against his better judgment, he took it. She yanked him out the saddle to stand beside her. Naruto felt his heart kick against his chest. Was this what it was like to be smitten? Lyanna. She grinned at him. Her eyes strayed to the sword at his hip. You know how to use that? Depends. He couldn't quite hide his smile. You know how to fight. Her grin grew. You'll do. Let's see what you're made of. Wait, what? Lady Stark threw the first punch. It was the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Rickard Stark considered himself an honorable man. He lived by that honor, and he was sure someday, in the distant future, he would die by that honor. It was simply his nature. Where other lords often acted in their own self-interests, he put family first before greatness, duty before glory. Honor before dishonor. It was in his blood. He was a Stark in all things, and Starks kept their word. Even when it seemingly made little sense to so. Most Southerners called the Starks hidebound for that. Rigid. Inflexible. Bah, the fools in their precious summer silks. How little they knew. There was no man more loyal than a Northman. Thus it fell to him to steer his family in the North in these trying times. Who else could? His eldest son, hot-blooded Brandon, had run off to Riverrun again to see his betrothed. Ned was being fostered in the Eyrie, and Lyanna, well. While his wild she-wolf of a daughter remained here in Winterhold, she had problems of her own. No, it fell to him to do the right thing, the only thing to see their home and hearth protected. Even if that meant allying with Tywin Lannister. Initially, he hadn't known what to think when the raven from Castle Rock came. Such an odd message it carried. Dark wings brought dark words, as the saying went, and his had proven no exception. He'd spoke of terrible things, of the Mad King's increasing paranoia, of him striking at his children and advising him to do the same. That raven would not be the last. They'd continued their correspondence in the years that followed. Tywin Lannister was a dangerous man. A hard man. A ruthless man. He might completely trust his motives, but he trusted that the man was no friend of the Mad King. For King Aerys Targaryen had most assuredly gone mad. If he would strike at the children of the Warden of the West, then who was to say he wouldn't target another? He had taken his warning in good faith and maintained a line of constant communication hence. Truth be told, he had been somewhat surprised that he wanted to foster Nathaniel here for a time, but he could understand the old lion hedging his bets. Any father, even a lion, protected his children. There was a brutal logic behind it. The north was far from the reach of Aerys and his ilk, and he had little sway here. With the hound and that strange silent girl at his side, any assassins that Aerys sent this way, if he was indeed behind that ghastly spectacle in Castle Rock, would be swiftly dispatched. Still, he wondered what Tywin was attempting. Was he trying to seek a match between their children? Nathaniel and Lyanna got on quite well, perhaps a little too well, even. They'd become fast friends from the moment of their meeting and grown closer still these last 3 years. Very close. That was the very reason he was writing even now. Scratching out the last of his current letter, he blew the dust from it, considered its contents, nodded once, and went about his preparations. The signet ring of the Starks pressed down against wax red as blood and sealed it. Satisfied with his admittedly hasty work, he turned and handed it to the Maester Luwin. "See this to Castle Rock, as soon as possible." "As you will, my lord." The man bowed. Rickard watched him go in silence. Only when the door closed did he allow his shoulders to slump and his true face to show. He hoped Tywin would respond swiftly. Fancy words aside, the question had been a simple one. "Is your son seeking my daughter's hand?" He didn't know. He just didn't know. Nathaniel and Lyanna were thick as thieves, and while it was true that they were a good match, he knew Nathaniel was writing letters of his own. Not just back home to Castle Rock, oh no, but Dorne and King's Landing as well. He had many fingers in many pies, it seemed. Honor had prevented him from breaking the seals to read the messages himself thus far, and well it did, because it kept him from being caught up in a game of courtly intrigue that he had no desire to deal with. There was no simply way of know what that boy was thinking at any given day. Could he, in good faith as a father, entrust Lyanna to them? Would he honor her? Letter aside, Nathaniel at least comported himself better than that Baratheon boy. He'd heard unsettling things about that one in brothels. He couldn't countenance such a man to be her betrothed. Or worse, the Prince Rhaegar. No, no, no. He didn't want her anywhere near the prince. He refused to subject her to the madness of Aerys and his ilk. Just thinking of it made him shudder. But Nathaniel, Nathaniel. What was he going to do with that boy? He spoke to her with honor and accepted her fiery disposition as few suitors could. 7 hells, he encouraged her most of the time. He genuinely seemed to enjoy riding with her, sparring with her, even venturing down the crypts with her on occasion. He had no doubt his daughter would be delighted with such a match, if indeed that was Nathaniel's intention. Sod this, he needed a drink. A knock on his door drew him forth from his maudlin melancholy before he could indulge. Rickard looked at it with a world-weary sigh. He didn't tell them to enter. He didn't wish to be seen in such a state. "What is it?" "Begging your pardon, my lord," a servant called, her voice muffled through the wooden frame. "But you told me to tell you if there was another disturbance in the yard." The gray ghost of a smile plucked at his bearded face. "Fighting again, are they?" A regal sniff answered him. They sounded almost proud. "Dueling, my lord." "Again," he chuckled softly. "Who's winning this time?" .0.0.0. Raw. Lyanna fought like a demon. Her sword flicked in at his face like greased lightning, constantly striking, lunging, ever on the attack. Naruto ducked, but not quite fast enough. She was quick, even with a blunted blade, fiendishly so. Pain blossomed up his side. He grit his teeth, stomped down, and twisted his body at the last instant, evading her what he knew would be a follow-up thrust by the merest margin. Her strike went wide, and he hammered a fist up into her gut. She staggered back, massaging her stomach, and actually laughed at him for it, the wild girl. Well struck. Only a Stark could get the wind knocked out of them and laugh. The people of the North were made of stern stuff indeed. She dove in at him again, sword swinging, forcing a high parry. Her eyes sparkled as she disengaged in a swirl of silk and brought her blade screaming in toward his left hip. He swatted that aside and struck back in a wide sweep that had her dodging back to gain distance. The very second she stepped back, he brought his blunt blade crashing down in an overhand swing. She had no choice but to block it naturally, and the force of doing so drove her down to a knee. Here at last, her smile faltered just a little. Right before she gave up the block, swept to the right, and smashed her sword into his knee. He grunted in surprise, briefly unbalanced, and stumbled back, letting Aur reclaim her footing once more. That was a cheap shot. Her smile flashed out, brilliant as a sunbeam. All's fair in love and war. A blonde brow rose. And which is this, then? She faltered for a second. He used it to close the distance and attack again, forcing her on the back foot. No fair. A grin tore across his face as steel struck steel in a song of ice and fire, the rhythmic clashes jolting his arms as much as hers. He could hold out, she couldn't. He knew he could beat her in a fair fight, break her bones, her neck even, but he didn't want to do any of that. He liked Lyanna and enjoyed her company. He didn't want to hurt her, let alone accidentally kill her. Instead he held back, restrained himself, humored her, and fought just hard enough to help her improve day by day. Win-win situation, right, wrong, now if only she weren't so smug about it. He could feel expectant eyes watching them from the battlements and down in the lower yard. Half the castle seemed to think this was some sort of bizarre courtship ritual between them. Every morning he and Lyanna would face each other in the yard at dawn. And every morning he moved just a little faster, forcing her to up her game in return. The other half of the castle thought they were genuinely trying to kill one another. It had become something of a spectator sport for Winterhold. Some of the small folk even made bets on them. The hound seemed to find it all amusing in a grim sort of way, if only because he knew he could happily hand Lyanna her ass with both hands tied behind his back. Nymeria wasn't fond of her, but he'd begun to suspect the reason for that. She didn't like anyone who took up his time. Well, no one who wasn't a Lannister at least. Lyanna stomped on his foot suddenly, trapping him, snapping him back to reality. He could have dodged what came next any number of ways and knocked her to the dirt. Instead he braced himself and let the wild Stark smack him on the head with the flat of her blade. Dead, she sang triumphantly, eyes alight with the thrill of victory. I win again, Tilda. So you did, he allowed, feigning defeat with a bow. Her blunted blade smacked his ribs this time. Dead, A-A-A-A-N-D dead. She grinned. He blew out a sigh. Lyanna. Can't hear you, you're. When next she swiped at him again, he caught the tomboyish girl's blade below the hilt with a gloved hand. Dead, am I? He cocked a golden brow. Her eyes widened. Shit. Quite. He swung a leg out and swept her feet, flipping her flat onto her back. And that, as they say, was that. From there he took a moment to catch his breath, steam rising in the air. The north was colder than he was used to, but he could endure it. Lyanna, however, there was no enduring her. She was a she-wolf through and through, always wanting to ride and run and fight. She fought pretty damn good too, for a girl who wasn't supposed to know such things. He enjoyed their spars, but he missed his family. Father, mother, Jaime, little Tyrion, and yes, even Cersei. He could see the reasoning behind it. This wasn't a punishment but a means to protect him. A noise drew his ear. Seemed Lady Stark had found her footing. You could have helped me up. He turned to face her with a wry smile. Why, you don't need my help for that. You're plenty strong now. Only because of you. You've gotten better at this. Lyanna stared at him for a long moment, then bit her lip as he looked on. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad if you stayed here. In Winterfell, I mean. She finished just a tad too quickly, struggling with her words a little, made anxious by something he couldn't quite comprehend. It might be fun, having you knock me down more often. He blinked, thoroughly puzzled by her remark. What kind of backward compliment was that? Her eyes flashed and he had an inkling. All right, I'll bite. What are you up to now? Lyanna clamped a hand across his mouth to silence him. Then she tore her hand from his lips, leaned in, and pressed something far softer to them. Soft, warm, yielding. Naruto barely had time to comprehend what she'd done before she drew away. Remember that, Nathaniel Lannister. She whispered hotly, face burning, words a low growl. Remember me. Then she was off, hurtling across the yard with a red face. Calling out after her did him no good. She only ran all that harder, all the faster, practically fleeing into the keep as though the hounds of the hells were at her heels. Just like that, those expectant gazes on his back suddenly became knowing ones, and he heard many a man and a woman tut softly to one another about young love and foolish youths under their breaths. Naruto heaved a sigh in their wake. That settled it. Girls were weird. Give him a woman any day. Although, he touched a hand to his lips, he could still taste her mouth on his. She'd surprised him. He liked surprises. Maybe, just maybe, it wouldn't be so bad to linger here a while longer. He could already hear the castle servants whispering to one another. He suspected he'd be hearing from Lyanna's father before nightfall. The faint crunch of snow behind him put paid to that thought. He pivoted, momentarily nonplussed before he mastered himself. Nymeria awaited him, head bowed low. A red priestess from Ashai wishes to speak with you, my lord. His curiosity piqued. Does she now? Where is she? At the gates. She only just arrived. Well, that was interesting. He didn't think anyone of their order was anywhere in Westeros. What was one doing here in the far north? Meeting her might prove an amusing diversion this morning, if nothing else. His shadow caught at his elbow. Be careful, I do no trust her. He craned his neck and found that Nymeria spoke the truth. A stranger awaited him at the gates, clad in red robes, dismounting a dark destrier black as night. She tugged down her hood as they regarded her from afar, revealing a youthful visage framed by bright hair and bright piercing eyes, eyes that focused firmly upon him now. I'll be careful. Nymeria nodded once and stepped back. That is all I ask. Her piece said. She stood her ground, watching him walk away. 7 long strides brought him across the yard to their foreign guest. Greetings, Lord Nathaniel of Castle Rock. The red priestess bowed her head in a curt nod and spoke in High Valyrian. Or shall I call you Naruto? Thank goodness Tywin made him learn High Valyrian. Wait. Her words caught up with him and his brow shot straight up into his hairline. She shouldn't know that name. It's Nathaniel, he replied in the same language, silently cursing her for throwing him off his game. She gave him a small smile. If that is the name you wish to go by in this life. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. His hand fell to the hilt of his sword. Do not be afraid. She looked past him, watching as the people of Winterfell bustled about them. They cannot understand us, and I mean you no harm. He was beginning to regret this. What brings you to the frozen north, miss? You may call me Melisandre. The priestess tilted her head to regard him. And I am here because our Lord wills it. Bloody fanatics. Why had he thought she would be any different? Our Lord, he scoffed. Spare me the speeches. I don't worship your Lord of Light. You have already done his work, though you've yet to realize it. He has sent me with a gift. She drew something large and heavy from her saddlebag, wrapped in dark cloth, and held it out to him. Here, I have satisfied my curiosity in meeting you. Now I shall fulfill my purpose. Baffled, he stepped in and tugged the cloth aside to inspect the item in question. A large egg awaited him, dark red in color and larger than his fist. His eyes widened at the sight of it. Is this what I think it is? A dragon egg from the Shadowlands of Ashai. The red priestess handed it to him, all but forcing him to accept it, lest he drop the bloody thing on the ground. His gift to you. I have seen your face in the flames. You will wake fire from stone. This will be but the first. He caught it awkwardly, tucking it against his right side under his cloak. Right. You do not believe me. She must have seen the confusion in his eyes, for the priestess's serene smile became sly. Perhaps a demonstration would soothe your fears. I don't need your prophecies. What I offer is knowledge, not prophecy. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Something seemed to shimmer within her gaze as she gazed upon him. In your first life, you fought in a great valley against one you called your friend. His name was Sasuke. You and I both know what fate befell him. His smile died an ugly death, dragging his good humor and curiosity into a shallow grave. How do you know that? I know much. She shrugged a shoulder. It is permitted to me by our Lord. Shall I prove myself once again? Her smile took on a sad, almost resigned tilt. In the past, you loved one who did not return your feelings. A foolish slip of a girl named Sakura. The words were a dagger in his heart, but she wasn't done with him yet. You also miss your dearest friend, the fox, Kurama. You shall see him again. Indeed, you hold his fate in your hands. His gaze snapped down to the dragon egg in his right hand. With the other he reached up and grabbed her by the robes, dragging her forehead down to his. What the hell are you? An instrument of our Lord's cleansing fire. She stared back at him, calm as can be. As are you. How is it that you return to life? He allowed it. I am not your enemy. Good, he growled. You don't want to be. Her hand was suddenly scalding hot. He held on in spite of it. The flames didn't burn him. That seemed to please her. Ah, a rapturous sigh fled from her lips. Sweet faith, how lovely it is to see mine rewarded firsthand. Truly I am blessed by our Lord. She looked past him suddenly. Your little shadow fears me. She need not. We shall meet again, Lion of Fire, when the war is done. War, she scoffed at her. What war? She smiled. The War of the Lion and the Dragon. His throat clogged for a moment. You can't prove that. I don't have to. Quick as a snake she grasped his hand and reeled him in. Time will tell, as shall I. Her eyes pierced his. You will have many great loves but stray from the path and you shall lose the most tender of them all. Her fingers bit into his wrist, drawing blood. I see a great many children in your future, and I shall bear one of them in time. Her voice was spellbinding, drawing him in despite his best attempts to resist. A girl with hair of fire. Ah, but the child of the north shall be the greatest of them all. It is he who will face the night. Enough. His temper sparked and Naruto shook himself free with an annoyed grunt, cutting her off. More riddles and vagaries. You do not believe yet. Melisandre granted him a pitying look, the kind incredibly old folk might grant a foolish child. You will, and you shall wish you hadn't. Enjoy your ignorance while you can, little lion. Her piece said she swung herself onto her steed before he could hope to get a word in. For the night is dark and full of terrors. Something about those words rooted him, left him glaring at her as she rode away, leaving him with the egg. He gave it a glance, frowning a little. Stone though it was, it felt warm to the touch. Could it be? Nymeria appeared soundlessly at his side, distracting him. I do not trust her. Naruto heaved a sigh. Neither do I, but she claims not to be our enemy. She had known things she couldn't possibly know. He prayed he never laid eye on her again. How little he knew. What's got you so spooked? Shish. Naruto shushed Sandor with a frantic wave of the hand. Don't stand out there in the hall gawking all day, get in here. The hound complied with an annoyed grunt, healed face twisting in irritation, but otherwise didn't protest. He ducked under the doorway to avoid banging his head, entered the room, and braced himself against said door for good measure. Only then did his eyes rove about the room, seeking the shadowy corners of their shared quarters. Where's that little minder of yours? Did you lose her when I wasn't looking? One of said shadows stirred beside him. A girl is here, noisy one. 7 hells. Amusing as it was to see Sandor jump like a scalded cat, they had more pressing concerns this afternoon. He waved Clegane closer. Neither of you are to breathe a word to this to anyone, do you hear me? This doesn't leave the room. If I hear either of you discussing this to anyone, I'll have to kill you. Nymeria already knew, of course. She'd witnessed that blood-red woman giving him the egg, but the hound hadn't. Now, his brow furrowed. What are you on about? Naruto stalked to his bed and yanked off the pillow, revealing the item in question. The hound squinted, blinked, visibly frowned now, as he beheld the red, stone-like object. Is that a bloody dragon egg? It is. He removed his glove and dared to touch it with a bare hand. It's warm. Nymeria rolled her eyes. A man states the obvious once again. Sandor drew back like he'd been scalded. Bugger. Naruto snatched up the egg and haphazardly stowed it in his pack, scowling when it didn't quite fit. That's one word for it. Little bastard's going to hatch on us, isn't he? Nymeria drove a pointed elbow into his side, drawing a grunt from him. Sandor's face tightened in a grimace. I can see why the mad bastard would want that. Moment of truth. You don't have a problem with this. That actually got a baffled look from his sworn sword. Why would I? The Mad King never gave a fuck about me and mine, so why should I care about him? Good. He released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That's good. After all, this egg just might contain Kurama. Or it might not. He didn't want to trust in the red woman's words and as such had no real way of knowing, only that it felt warm and alive. How long did it take dragon eggs to gestate, let alone hatch? Weeks, months, years. Either way, he wasn't about to reveal that tidbit to these two, much less in the letters he'd sent Elia and Rayella. Maybe he could tell his family, but he doubted mother and father would believe him. Cersei might, but she always did, and Tyrion was just a boy. He didn't dare send a raven to Jaime in King's Landing. It was too risky, unless... Someone knocked on the door, shattering that jagged though like brittle steel. All 3 of them froze where they stood. The hound recovered first, rolled his eyes and lumbered toward the archway, one hand grasping the hilt of his sword. With the other he knocked right back, hard enough to make the door jump on its frame. A startled cry came from the other side, sharp and poignant. Who goes? Lady Stark, came the reply. Open this door at once. Naruto violently shook his head to and fro. Clegane shrugged. It's for you. Aha, so he's in there after all. Blast. Rising to his feet, he strode to the door, opened it enough to thrust his head out and glare at her. What is it? Lyanna awaited him outside in a lovely blue dress, face rosy. I saw you run off earlier. May I come in? A memory struck him. Her lips on his, a quick and fleeting kiss just before she fled. Remember me, Nathaniel Lannister. Shite. He wasn't entirely sure letting her in now was a good idea, but she looked so very sad. Lyanna took full advantage, ducked under his arm and darted inside. Her eyes strayed to his pack, still left open. What's that? Nothing. He regretted words as soon as he said them. It was an act of instinct, an instinctual denial he couldn't quite suppress. She dodged Nymeria, darted to his pack, flung it open, and gasped. An egg. Oh my goodness. It's adorable. Lyanna, give that here. She danced back out his grasp with a grin, holding the egg to her chest. Never. Naruto could have ripped it from her grasp in an instant but paused, afraid of breaking it. Sometimes he really did wonder about that girl. A wild she-wolf, through and through, not at all like her brothers. Was he meant to marry her? Was that the reason Tywin had sent him here to Winterfell? The thought was not unpleasant. And yet he hesitated. Simply put, he didn't know where he stood on things just yet. The fair sex had often been an enigma to him even in his first life. Naruto Uzumaki had always been a bit of a dunce when it came to women. But Nathaniel Lannister was meant to know things, do things, pursue things. That meant children, heirs, as it were. In that regard, the concept of bastards confounded him. A child was a child no matter the mother or father. Should not all children should be raised, protected, and cared for accordingly? The idea of having a child didn't frighten him. No, he was frightened of himself, afraid that he wasn't ready, wasn't yet capable of such responsibility. Which was why he remained cautious, even now, when faced with the she-wolf of Winterfell. And then she surprised him, as she always did, and handed the egg back to him. I'll keep your secret. He plucked it from her hands and stowed it back in his pack. Thank you. On one condition. He heaved a sigh. Dare I ask? Lyanna looked him dead in the eye, and then she smiled. Kiss me. Nymeria absolutely hissed and thrust herself between them. A girl begs your pardon. Come along, girl. Sandor sighed, swept the startled assassin over his shoulder. This is a matter for lords and ladies, not us. The little assassin went absolutely berserk. Unhand a girl this instant. Release us. He did no such thing and stalked out the room. Naruto almost wished they stayed, if only because he didn't know how to respond to this. Wanna run that by me again? Gone deaf, have you? She planted a fist on her hip and cocked her body ever so slightly to the right. I said kiss me. I already did the same for you earlier today. Now I want you to repay the favor. He dithered. Come now, it's just a kiss. She granted him an impish smile. I've never been kissed by a boy before. I want to see how it feels. Nothing simpler. Easy for her to say. His brow furrowed in mild amusement. Are you blackmailing me? No, because I know you'll do it. Her smile was sly, yet somehow innocent. Blast. Cheeky little. Lyanna had him cornered here. She absolutely did. Unfortunately, he'd never been one to back down from a challenge. She wanted to keep poking the lion. She'd see what happened. He stepped into her. She didn't budge. His hands settled on her hips. Still no movement from her. Well, what are you waiting for? He leaned down and heard her breath hitch. She tried to say something then, but he never caught it. His lips graced hers and something sparked between the two of them. Lyanna made a pleased noise and leaned into him, gently at first, then bodily pushing herself up against him. No, that wasn't the right word. She didn't so much push as she did lunge, practically flinging her arms around his neck in her haste to get at him. Her body collided with his as she shoved him up against a wall, and when she tried to hold him there, he pivoted and pinned her instead, gripping her wrists. She bit his lip in retaliation, and the pain drew a growl from him as her fingers threaded through his hair. They parted at long last, eyes wide, gasping for air, chests heaving. Her eyes flitted up to his lips, just as his did down hers. Lyanna pressed into him ever so slightly. That spark became a raging inferno. Naruto dove into the flames. 0.0.0.0. Another letter had come. Queen Rhaella Targaryen unfurled it with trembling fingers and laid it upon her bed to read. This one was a mighty missive, speaking long and loudly of many travels and a great many things. It also came with a curious little vial, the contents of which the letter would soon be explained by the letter itself. Honestly, How her lion managed to keep sending such missives at all, let alone get them by Eris, utterly baffled her sometimes. Surely someone must have noticed by now. She left no proof and burned every letter as soon as she read them, but still, she was certain some must have seen her improved mood as of late. Unless they had been silenced. But by whom? Varys. She couldn't see why the spider would allow such a dalliance, even by correspondence such as this. Unless she hoped for the death of Eris, the same as she. He had been better once before the madness. Before the bad times. Before everything went wrong. Sharp as attack and thrice as ambitious, until ambition became paranoia, then fear, followed by hatred. By the time she realized what he was becoming, it was too late. She was shackled to a madman. There was no escape. She'd become queen of the 7 kingdoms, for all that mattered. She had no true power, she'd become a figurehead, little more. But now, here at last, she had hope. Rhaella clutched the letter to her bosom and dared to hope. Only then did she cast it into the fire and let it burn. None must know. 0.0.0.0. That very day, King Aerys Targaryen flayed himself bloody scratching. Some claimed it was the work of Essos, of a foreign dignitary, or a would-be assassin. None knew the truth, but many delighted in the king's discomfort, for he had made many enemies. Had Naruto been there to see the fruits of his labor, he would have smiled. It was but the beginning of the end. 0.0.0.0. Such a charmer. Elia Martell tutted softly as she read the letter, more a thick sheaf of parchment laid out before her. Nathaniel was enjoying himself in the north. She knew he was. Oh, he did no say such outright in his letters to her, but she wasn't a Martell for nothing. She could tell, read between the lines, as it were. Because you see, she remembered. She recalled that bright, sunny boy she'd met at Castle Rock, and his cutting wit. She remembered the strange tree they'd found, and what it had shown her. Nathaniel had been holding her hand when he touched it. She'd not said anything at the time, never once even considered what it might mean. Dark had been her dreams been of late, nearly enough to put her off her meals at first. If not for a baron, she might not have eaten at all. She'd since seen her death a dozen times, and in each demise, there was but one constant. Her family must never side with the dragon. That way lay her death. Her heart wept for the children she would never have, but it also wept for their deaths. So be it. If there was one she had learned in this life, it was patience. She'd been feeling better as of late. There was still time. The viper would lay in wait for the lion, hiding in the grass, until it was time to strike. He would be hers. 0.0.0.0. She wanted him. Lyanna wasn't surprised by the realization. In truth, it was something she'd been pondering for quite some time now. That last kiss had merely confirmed her decision. Father likely wouldn't want her to go to the Westerlands, but her mind was made up. She had to know, had to speak with him on this again soon, even if it was just the once. What was the saying folks in the Westerlands favored? 3rd time's the charm. Aha, yes, that was the one. She'd kissed him, he'd kissed her back, then they'd done quite a bit more of kissing and, well, now she knew what she wanted from him. Perhaps had she a clearer head on things, she might have realized just how bad an idea this was. But she was young and wild and restless into the 7 hells with what anyone thought. Her choice would shake the 7 kingdoms. 0.0.0.0. Naruto was brought before Lord Rickard Stark that very night. The Warden of the North awaited him in the Great Hall, ice in hand, fully drawn and hands resting firmly upon the greatsword's hilt, its deadly edge thrust into the stone floor. Valyrian steel really did cut like nothing else. They were alone, the both of them, the light low, the hearth dim. Flickering firelight cast dancing shadows across the Lord of Winterfell's stern visage, lending his next words a weight all their own. He leaned upon his mighty blade, looked upon him, and spoke. I will ask you this once, and only once. What are your intentions toward my daughter? And so he spoke, oh so he spoke, that Lord of Winterfell. Now he must soon answer, or there would be hell. Naruto took a deep breath to steady himself. Then he gave Lyanna's father his reply. Westeros was changing. Tywin felt in every letter he read these days, in the west and the east, the north and the south, from the far-flung area of the Vale, all the way to Sunspear in Dorne, he could feel the 7 kingdoms preparing. Most had heeded his warning to safeguard their families from the increasingly mad king, but even he couldn't be wholly certain as to what they were planning. Only that they were mustering their forces. For what precisely, he still didn't know. War, if so, then against whom? The crown, the Westerlands. Surely Aerys wouldn't be so foolish as to declare against him of all people. Right, the man was a raving lunatic. Who knew what he might do next? He had already tried to take Nathaniel from him and all but forced Jaime to don the white cloak of the Kingsguard to keep his paranoia at bay. There was no end to his paranoia. That said, he'd received rather interesting tidings from his eldest son this year. How kind of Jaime to keep him informed of such things. As they'd agreed, of course. The boy need not wear that white cloak forever, only so long as to deflect the king's attention from the rest of the family. And deflect he had. You see, it seemed Aerys Targaryen had come down with a rather curious bout of terrible bloody scratching. Such a shame. Some said it might even be a form of grayscale. Many a maester had tried and failed to cure him of this malady. They'd even amputated his right arm in a desperate attempt to stave off the affliction. In truth, he suspected Nathaniel had something to do with the king's suffering. His son had ever been adept to anything he set his mind toward. Of course, if his constant communique helped keep the queen in check as well, all the better. It was always wise to have a monarch in one's pocket, powerless though she might be. And if she truly was entertaining the idea of a dalliance with Nathaniel as he believed she may well be, then it meant they had another knife poised to strike at Aerys where he least expected it. Best to keep one's options open. Aerys had to go. By hook or crook, for force or peace, he must be removed from the Iron Throne, and soon. If not for the good of the Lannisters, then that of the realm. The thought shamed Tywin, but only for a moment as he went back to work. His old friend had been a good king once, or rather he'd tried to be. Aerys was so full of energy and optimism and ideas in the beginning, before the dark days. Before the madness took hold, before Duskendale. Before that last bitter argument between them finally shattered their friendship forever. With that thought in mind, Tywin began to scratch out another letter with his quill. This one was addressed to the Baratheons. Steffon Baratheon had several sons after all, one of which may well make a match for Cersei. Oh yes, Westeros was awe-changing. But for better or worse, even he could not say. Time would tell. Regardless, he would be prepared. A Lannister always pays his debts. 0.0.0.0. Days spiraled into wild weeks. And weeks into months. Months into a year. Then another. Another. Naruto tried to keep track of the time all, but it just wasn't possible. You could count the days one after the other to be sure, but he had so much more on his mind than the passing of the moon and sun. There were letters to write, friends to find, allies to make and hearts to break. He took no pleasure in the last one. He couldn't afford to sow wild oats here, as the saying went. Many a northern lass fancied him, and more still were taken in by his good looks, but he knew Lyanna wouldn't look kindly on him betting every comely servant that caught his eye. No matter how entertaining it might be. All the while he kept his egg close, if not on his personage, then carefully tucked away in his quarters where no one could find it. He had no fear of someone breaking the bloody thing, it had already proven tough as stone, but he was very much leery of letting anyone else see it. Both the Hound and Nymeria were sworn to secrecy, to say nothing of Lyanna herself, but he dare not trust anyone else. Winterfell and the Starks were good and loyal people, but it only took one pair of loose lips to sink a ship. And this ship was sailing into dark waters indeed. The time approached, the hour drew near. Soon, he would be free from the north, but free to do whatever he wished, or what exactly? Return home. Yes, that went without saying. He missed Castle Rock and his family, but so too had he kept in contact with Rhaella and Elia, to say nothing of Cersei. They'd each told him things, and through them, he learned of the dark tidings in King's Landing. Jaime didn't dare send a raven his way, he didn't dare these days, not with that mad dragon ranting and raving, but he did write to others, and in so doing, kept relatively abreast of the news, dated though it sometimes was. It seemed old Aerys was going quite insane these days, and he was down an arm now thanks to his itching, as it were. Such a shame, Tilda. Setting his quill back in the inkpot, he leaned away from the latest letter on his writing desk and stretched both arms above his head. It promised to be a cold night, tonight. He'd have to stoke the fire again. Movement in his peripheral vision drew his eye. On a whim, he craned his neck towards it. Sure enough, his gaze was inexorably drawn back to the egg in all its crimson glory. It trembled once atop the bed, where he'd left it hanging out his backpack. Naruto frowned at its surface. Had he imagined that just now? Maybe. Sure enough, it rocked anew. He glared at it. Don't you dare. Another tremor shook its scaled surface. He noticed it at once and burst to his feet, swearing softly. No, No no, he practically dove on it, dragging it into his embrace to feed it with fresh chakra. Don't hatch here, you'll get me in trouble. The egg went still at his tender touch, almost as if it understood. Surely that was impossible. Yet he could feel it, its eagerness, wanting to be free and feast and fight, to be reunited. Wait a minute, reunite. The hound swung wide the door, interrupting him. Got a visitor, brat. He frowned. Not now. Yes, now. Lyanna swanned into the room with a swirl of silk and a song, distracting him beautifully. Good evening. Ooh Tilda. She noticed him holding the egg and her face lit up. She paused only just long enough to latch the door behind her before throwing herself onto the bed beside him. Do you think it will hatch soon? Naruto bit his tongue until he tasted blood and pointedly chose not to mention what just happened. I hope not. But dragons. She flounced onto the bed with a giddy sigh. Just think of it, yours will be the first in an age. Wouldn't that be wonderful? Wonderful, she says. He scoffed almost despite himself. About as wonderful as you claiming a direwolf. Touching a hand to the egg, he scowled at it. If that really is a dragon in there, it won't let me ride it. They only take to Targaryens, remember? Not so. His wild wolf righted herself with deceptive grace and laid her head upon his shoulder. There was this girl back in the dance of the dragons. Her name was Nettles. He spied the flash of a grin on her lips as she turned to face him fully. She brought a wild dragon sheep and fed it until the beast accepted her as its rider. His name was Sheepstealer. Naruto knew the story well. There was indeed mention of such a girl. Although she had supposedly survived the dance, she vanished soon thereafter. It was hard to know. History was rife with the Greens and Blacks and their pointless war. They had, quite literally, danced away the birthright of future Targaryens. Though he supposed he ought to be grateful, Aerys was mad and dangerous enough, but with a dragon like Melis or Caraxes at his beck and call. Or sage forbid, Vagar. He shuddered at the thought. Lyanna coughed pointedly, demanding his wisely focused on her, instead. You know your histories. Of course I do, she preened. I love dragons. Just think. Taking his hand, she guided it back to the egg. Yours will be the first thing it sees. Not yours. I am no mother of dragons. She huffed indignantly, but he didn't miss the lack of rancor in her voice, nor her sly, selfsame smile. I am a wolf, and you are my lion. Her fingers curled around his as she spoke. Indeed, she said it as though it were the most obvious thing in the world. And you always will be. No matter what happens. She sat with him a while after that. No words were said, nor were any needed. Together, they basked in the warmth of the hearth. 0.0.0.0. Cersei darling, you have a visitor. Her first warning was Mother's voice. Even then, she barely had time to prepare. Hurriedly she ran a hand through her hair, smoothed down the silk of her golden dress and... The door to her sitting room swung wide open, forcing her to clamber to her feet, still struggling to make herself presentable as Mother swept in, little Tyrion tucked under one arm. She barely noticed her little brother, for you see, there was someone else with Joanna Lannister, someone she didn't recognize at all. A boy. Here in the castle. No, not a boy, but a young man. What was this? Father had made no such mention of a match. Her eyes widened as she beheld the tall stranger, encased in a gold and black doublet with matching trousers. Idly, she noticed the warhammer slung across upon his back. This is Robert Baratheon. Mother's smile was radiant. He's come all the way from the Stormlands to pay a call on you. Her eyes twinkled. Isn't he handsome? Robert Baratheon beamed at her and sketched a rough bow. Pleasure to meet you, my lady. Cersei tilted her head and considered him. He was handsome enough to be sure, but he was no Nathaniel, even with his dark hair and piercing blue eyes. Gods. She recoiled from the thought a moment later. She had sworn to better on the old gods and the new, and they had answered her. In her darker moments she feared what might happen should she renege on her promise. Would her dear brother collapse? Like a puppet cut from its strings. What would Jaime think? So she forced a smile she didn't quite feel, put on a happy face for Robert and endured. 0.0.0.0. Elia swept her sword forth with a snarl and knocked her brother to the ground. A baron barked a laugh and swept up his spear with a grin. Once more, sister, you'll best that lion yet. 0.0.0.0. Rhaella burned another letter in the hearth. She watched the parchment wither and crackle in the heat, curling away to nothingness, sighing softly. Her strength was failing. These letters from her lion gave her strength, but Aerys was growing increasingly mad these days. She wasn't sure how much more she could endure. She was the blood of the dragon, of old Valyria, but sometimes she just felt so tired these days. So very weary. Her so-called husband had ever been a shell of his former self since the madness took hold, but now he'd taken to attacking those around him for the merest of slights. He'd not laid hand on her yet, thank the gods, but she'd only narrowly managed to divert his fury last time. She'd taken to drugging his food with milk of the poppy since, but now he was outright refusing to eat, which in turn only made it must end soon. If it did not, she would take one of her eating knives, waiting for the right moment and stab. The door opened behind her. She barely paid it any heed. It was only when said door closed and someone coughed behind her that she finally took notice. "Not now," she muttered, staring into the flames. Her visitor coughed yet again. Rayella kept staring at the flames. She imagined herself a dragon, taking wing and burning King's Landing to ash, flying far, far away from this wretched place. "My lady." Violet eyes flashed with indignation as she rounded on them. "I said not now." All the color drained from her face as she beheld her guest. The Master of Whispers smiled pleasantly back at her. "The spider, here. Lord Varys." "Just Varys if you please." The bald man bowed his head and looked to a seat. "May I?" Rayella sputtered weakly, then rallied. "Why, yes, of course, was there something you wished to discuss?" He locked the door and sat before her. Silence reigned, save for the crackling of flame. His eyes met hers for a long moment. At length, he sighed, then spoke. "I believe the king had become a danger to himself and others. Do you not feel the same?" Poor Rayella damn near choked on her spit, and panicked with it. "I know not what you mean, and I'll thank you not to speak of this." He shook his head slowly, cutting her short. "Come now my queen, let us not dance around this. We both know the truth, do we not?" A small, despairing noise burst out o' her. "What would you have me do? I am powerless, I have nothing, I cannot." He handed her a letter. "Continue your correspondence, of course." Rayella accepted it warily. "What is it?" Varys smiled for her. It was not a nice smile. "Consider it a message for our mutual friend." Aerys was wroth. Jaime had never seen him this furious before, not in all the years since he'd become a Kingsguard. This recent spat frightened him more than he cared to admit, if only because no one knew what had set him off today. It was always something, be it the merest word or the slightest glance, the slightest tuff more than enough to set him into a downward spiral. Today was the worst he'd seen him yet. Ranting and raving and raging, he paced before the Iron Throne, one sleeve flapping loosely behind him like some sad banner. Shame they hadn't taken his two-leg, perhaps then he might be spared of this incessant pacing. The king had been itching himself greatly as of late, flaying himself bloody scratching. If he wasn't cutting himself upon the throne, he was suffering beneath this mysterious malady and his madness besides. "It's all his fault, I know it is, that blasted lion." Jaime listened with half an ear as the king droned on. He imagined himself home at